Week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, 6 in 10 adults in the U.S. have a chronic disease, driving Americans to spend billions on prescription drugs. But experts are increasingly using another kind of medicine, food. Meet the local Boston organization that helped pioneer food as medicine. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, tonight at 9 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on the 11 o'clock hour BPR, live from the Boston Public Library and a Red Room in Cambridge. Of course. We'll start our Wednesday with a work check-in, opening the phone and text lines to talk about mentorship at the office. With many office workers still not going into work, especially younger ones, who's to blame for putting career growth and mentorship on the back burner? Call or text, and yes, I'm feeling better. Thank you for asking.
I'm Marjorie Egan. After that, it's our weekly arts and culture rundown with culture show host Jared Bowen, hot off a trip to Berlin. He'll tell us about the museums he's visited, and we'll do our best to get the pronunciations right. Does this new Wicked sequel have any heart or brains? Jared will give us her official review of that as well. It's all ahead, 11 o'clock hour at BPR, GBH, and NEPM, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump's envoys met Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday in Moscow. They discussed a peace plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine. The plan had been edited with input from Ukrainian and European diplomats. The Kremlin says Putin accepted some proposals and rejected others, but Moscow insists it's still ready to talk. NATO officials are meeting in Brussels. The foreign minister of Estonia, Margus Tsahkna, says Putin does not want peace.
What we see is that Putin has not changed any goals. He's pushing more aggressively on the battlefield. It's pretty obvious that he doesn't want to have any kind of peace.
Putin's talks with the U.S. envoys did not achieve any breakthrough. A survey of U.S. diplomats finds that morale at the State Department is extremely low. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports this comes as President Trump has spent nearly a year in the White House.
The president of the American Foreign Service Association, John Dinkelman, calls it a dire situation. 98% of the Foreign Service officers surveyed reported low morale, and 86% said the Trump administration's changes have affected their ability to advance U.S. diplomatic priorities.
The diplomatic corps of the United States feels the effects of what has been undertaken in the form of managing their workplace to the ground.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he's been streamlining what he calls a bloated bureaucracy. He dismantled the U.S. Agency for International Development and then laid off another 1,300 State Department employees in July. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The Department of Homeland Security says it has launched an immigration operation in New Orleans today. The Trump administration says it is targeting violent criminals. The FBI says it is now working with the Louisiana State Police on an operation. This is to stop assaults on federal law enforcement officers. Glitches in the middle of video calls may be more than annoying. Some new experiments show that technical hiccups may undermine your success in everything from job interviews to court hearings. NPR's Nell Greenfield-Boyce explains.
A team of researchers did experiments by simulating some common video call scenarios, like health consultations or sales pitches, to see how people in glitch-free video calls are perceived, compared to people whose videos have brief freezes, lags, or audio echoes. The results in the journal Nature show that glitches when a person was speaking resulted in that person being perceived as less likable or trustworthy. The researchers also studied some real-world data from parole hearings that were conducted over video and found that technical glitches significantly reduced the chances that someone would get parole. Nell Greenfield-Boyce, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 220 points. This is NPR.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell says residents demoralized by politics today should not give up hope. Speaking at a campaign fundraiser in Northampton, she said America is a work in progress and even modest amounts of civic engagement can make a difference.
So, for example, there are people in here who volunteered at their food bank as we were fighting to protect SNAP. That is enough. If you're waking up every single day and going to work, or a young person living in fear but waking up every single day to go to school, to still show up, that's an act of resistance. That is enough.
Campbell, who is in her first term as AG, has launched her re-election campaign for 2026. She currently has no challenger. And bar advocates or public defenders have created a new group to lobby Beacon Hill lawmakers to increase pay for hundreds of private attorneys who represent indigent clients. The Eagle Tribune reports that the newly formed Massachusetts Association of Private Appointed Counsel will focus on increasing the compensation for the attorneys who represent about 80% of people who can't afford legal representation in the Massachusetts court system. The group says the system faces a crisis that has forced judges to release defendants and dismiss hundreds of cases for lack of representation. In sports, the professional women's hockey is in action tonight. The Fleet hosting the Vancouver Golden Eyes at the Agganis. Puck drops at 7. In the forecast, sun, clouds, and upper 30s today. Cloudy mid-20s overnight. Sunny near 40 tomorrow. It is 35 in Boston, 36 in Springfield. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to NPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim is not here. He is once again powering through in the Red Room. I want you to know, Jim, the Red Room, questions about the Red Room are the number one inquiry from the listeners on text messages. Maybe we can get to that later. But anyway, we are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim will be back in person tomorrow. We're also going to have live music from the Levy's in Studio 3, which is going to be fantastic. They are fabulous. Yeah, associated with some of the people from Guster. Then we're going to be back here at the library on Friday. The Black Hole Symphony is going to join us for live music Friday and more. Hello again, Jim. I hope you're feeling better.
I'm doing much better. Thanks for asking, Marjorie. We're starting the show today with mentorship and how the pandemic or remote work transition may be having serious implications, particularly for young and early career people. We're 5 years out from a massive lifestyle shift because of COVID-19. And while many workers have returned to the office, some haven't, citing remote work as liberating, no commute, no endless in-person meetings, no annoying coworkers covering you with, taking up your time with small talk, or you're just trying to get a cup of coffee, but also no mentorship either. A new piece in the Globe. This is by Kara Miller, our former colleague, right?
It's a
by
great,
Kara Miller,
piece.
Argues that trade-off might be doing more harm than good, asking, quote, is mentorship for young workers collapsing? So the lines are open at 877-301-8970 to call or text. What would it take to get you back at the water cooler small talk location? And even in this piece, Kara Miller writes that some experts are saying young people, as a result of the lack of mentorship, are ultimately going to be unemployable. Now, on the other hand, one company listed on Massachusetts' best places to work in the Globe offers $75 monthly stipends for workers to get together with others outside the office, drinks, movies, etc. Others offer affordable child care, the idea being if we get to know each other and can be made more affordable to go to work, maybe we'll actually show up. So what do you think? 877-301-8970, call or text. Is mentorship collapsing? If it is it of concern for you, or is your position is even if it is collapsing, what really matters to me is the ability to work from home, let mentorship and my future be damned. The number is 877-301-8970. I should say, Marjorie, even though
Jim.
Kara Miller writes it far better than I could have spoken it, who has been saying this for years?
Well, of
who
course,
would that be?
That would be you, Jim
That
Browdy,
is correct.
Of course.
And by the way, I should say, young people themselves. Did you see the poll and Kara's story, the Harris poll and Big
people
Brothers,
like
Big
staying
Sisters?
at home.
No. The opposite.
Oh.
I'm not saying they don't like staying at home. 2/3 of 18 and 25-year-olds say they are missing opportunities because they don't have the right knowledge. So at the same time that they want to stay at home, they acknowledge that they're losing out. So in the short term, they're great things. You have a much better lifestyle, work at home. In the long term, I buy into this notion. You combine the AI advent with the lack of mentorship, and a lot of young people are going to be unemployable down the line.
Okay, our number is 877-301-8970 if you want to call or text. I have to begin this by saying, after reading this, I realize I've fallen down on the job with my staff here.
Oh, my God.
Right after Christmas, we'll go out to the stockyard again for cocktails. We can all have a mentoring session, because I don't do that much more mentoring either. But I think...
Can I respond to that, please?
No, don't respond.
I don't think you understand mentorship. Let me explain it to you. The best example... No, I'm going to tell you what...
Okay.
I've told you this story before.
All right,
when
Jim.
I started working in the news, mid-career change, I'd never done journalism.
Yep.
Sitting 3 desks away from me was R.D. Soul, and sitting next to me was Chet Curtis, 2 of the great newsmen of our lifetimes. I was mentored by them just by osmosis because they were in the room.
Yeah.
And I got to hear what they do. It's not going out and having drinks with your coworkers.
Well, no, it is.
It's being a presence.
Well, it is. That's part of it, going out and having drinks with the coworkers. But I do think there's no question, and I say this too, I learned from the people around me how to be a reporter, and I would not have learned without the people around me or watching the people around me. But you know what I thought was very interesting in this? What are you laughing at?
Nicole wrote a note, our coworker. I like Marjorie's mentorship
Yeah, that's
style.
right.
Marjorie mentors us over martinis.
Absolutely. They have wonderful martinis at the stockyard. You know, they give you, it's right next to GBH. They give you a little ice container next to it so you can keep all the martini cool and pour like a sip or two in at a time. We'll do that right after Christmas. But I want to say, one of the things I thought was interesting about Kara's story was she talked about the empathy problem. And I think it's true. If you don't sit with your coworkers or hang out with your coworkers or know your coworkers, you don't have a lot of empathy for their problems, and your bosses may not have much empathy for you because they don't know you. So if something happens in your life, I think you're going to get a lot less response from someone who's really kind of a virtual stranger. I think that's really true. And they also talk about, Kara does, the pandemic, that a lot of people, you know, we all know young people who high school was in, you know, they were home during high school because of the pandemic. They were home during college during the pandemic. They didn't learn those kind of interpersonal skills, so they're very awkward, and they feel awkward. Everybody texts now. They don't call you, or they email, or they don't. The interpersonal back and forth is uncomfortable for lots of people. I think it's a huge problem. And you know, I had a lot of mentors too, growing up. Unfortunately, most of them were sexual harassers. They're no longer with us now. Jesus. Well, it's true. Everybody's sexually harassed back in the day. That's why I was always grateful to Anita Hill, who brought everything to the fore. Anyway,
can I say one?
What?
I want to say one other example. I actually have personal experience with this. I'm going to say this carefully because it's about some wonderful people. I think people know I used to do a television show here in Greater Boston. And during the pandemic, we were doing it, and the vast majority of people started working at home, which I totally understand. And I've said this to you before, this is not a reflection on an individual because there was no choice. The quality of work of some of the younger people who were mentored by some of our wonderful veteran colleagues when they were in the office declined. They weren't doing as well as they were doing before. And it's not because they weren't wonderful, talented people. It's because they weren't gaining experience from people who'd been doing it for decades and were wonderful mentors. So this is not an abstract thing. It's a real problem, and people have to figure out how to make it work, in my opinion.
Okay.
877-301-8970.
Let us start with Dave in New Hampshire. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Dave.
Marjorie, it's a slice of heaven to be able to speak with you. Thank you for having me. And Jim, I'll deal with you at a later time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi.
What's up?
Thanks, Dave.
What's up, Dave?
I'll be brief. My son works for a company called Morgan Stanley. You may have heard of them.
Yes. Yes.
Their main headquarters are in New York. They're a huge financial services provider. Their former chairman, was a gentleman by the name of James Gorman. And about 2 years ago, coming out of COVID, and this whole thing was really reaching a pot kettle, he came out with a statement to his staff saying that if you can go to New York in New York City, you can go to the office. And he was a man that brooked no foolishness. He didn't have to say much beyond that, and everyone went back to work. Now, I think it's critical. My son thinks it's critical because in terms of developing newer employees, or if you're a newer employee being developed, or that type of thing, you know what I'm trying to say. It's critical that you have that in-person piece part of it. So, anyway.
Well, that was a great call, and we got to let you go because the connection's atrocious. Dave, thanks. Good luck to your kid. Anonymous texter, for once I agree with Jim. Most mentorship is osmosis. It's just being in the room and sharing experience as the action is happening. I hope you don't have COVID.
No,
I wasn't
don't.
with you,
I just
right?
swallowed the wrong way. I just my water went down the wrong way.
877-301-8970. By the way, I'm not calling for an end to work from home because it is, I mean, these few days that I've been sick, it actually is quite great to be working from home in a lot of ways, even though I prefer going to the office. But there's got to be a better mix so that young people have an opportunity to benefit from being in the presence of people who are really good and experienced at what they do.
So you want to make that mix? Do you want to say 3 days a week or 4 days a week?
I don't know what the magic. I think it depends on the workplace, but I think this notion, even though if I were a 25-year-old and someone said to me, you can work from home for the same salary, which basically means work anywhere in the world, I'd probably take that. But I think it's because most people at the beginning of their careers don't know how important it is to be working next to people who really know what they're doing.
But one of the big things arguing against a change is that because everything is so expensive now, including childcare, including transportation, all that kind of stuff, that the finances would be so impacted by people, especially people with young children that can get off a day or two of childcare without having to go to work.
You know what the solution to that is? If an employer realizes that their young employees will be long-term employees and better employees, then they got to provide some of those benefits to people so they can afford to go to work. That's the bottom line.
877-301-8970 is the number. Nick from Hartford, Connecticut. Hi, Nick.
Hello, Nick.
Hey there. So I started working fully remote about 5.5 years ago, and I honestly can't imagine going back to full-time in-person work, even as a dedicated employee, when my company, among others, are just making massive amounts of layoffs and aren't actually investing in their own people. I'm not sure what younger people than I should feel about this when they're looking at a world that's basically looking to replace them with AI and is throwing money at that. And I don't really think that they're genuinely interested in fostering a better career for these people.
Well, Nick,
seems disingenuous.
Well, no, I think you make a wonderful point, and there are exceptions to every rule. If you had a workplace that was more supportive and more concerned about developing young talent, would you feel differently?
A little bit, yeah. But I can't really speak to my current situation because they seem totally checked out from reality and don't seem to keep, just for example, they're posting for jobs subordinate to mine at my current pay for someone that would be below me. They're not actually focused on what their actual talent pool is. And with all the layoffs going on right now, I kind of suspect that this is the case at a lot of companies right now where people are just scrambling to keep up with this administration's strategy.
Yeah, but Nick, even in a situation, because I think a lot of companies that screw people. I think a lot of corporations are not really good to the people that work for them. On the other hand, if you have mentors and people on your side within even a not so great corporation, it can maybe help you get to a different corporation down the road. You make those connections. You know what I mean? With people at work that somebody might have an opportunity elsewhere and think of you if they had an opportunity for you at that place too. Because I think a lot of us are quite cynical, rightly, about the way corporations run. But thank you,
Nick. That was a great call as always from you. Here's an interesting anonymous texter. Do people even want to be mentored anymore? They just YouTube or ask AI on how to approach a problem. By the way, that is true, and I do that as well. The problem is you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know to go to AI or to YouTube to ask a question about how to deal with something if you're not even aware that there's an issue to be dealt with. And again, that's the value of being in the presence of people who do know.
Here's another anonymous texter. My husband is 32 years old. He has yet to find a mentor in his industry. The older people he works with simply seem uninterested and uninvested. Because of this, he puts a substantial amount of effort into being a mentor for the younger people he works with, which is great. You know, there are certain people that are really good at this. You know, you see them, that they're great mentors. The people they see, I think it's about friendships. It's about people wanting to help you rise up in your career, you know, and that's why we're going to go to the stockyard right after Christmas.
Well, actually, it's interesting you say that Coda from Boston texts, if more companies used Marjorie's approach to mentorship, people would be flocking back to the office.
And
that's
you know,
probably true.
It's a beautiful thing. It's right across the street, so you don't even have to walk very far. You don't have to walk over there. They have a fireplace going. I'm doing a free ad, apparently, for the stockyard here.
An anonymous texter says, I am 20. This is a variation on Nick's call. I am 29. Mentorship means squat if it will result in things staying the same. We need to change the role workplace in our lives. You're totally right, obviously. This is just a little slice of the proverbial pie, but that's totally true.
Well, you know, that's the other thing. And I've had this conversation with my own children and their friends that they're in their 20s and 30s. Do you want to live to work or do you want to work to live? And I think that's a big debate a lot of young people are having now. But on the other hand, because everything is so expensive, if you are not working a lot and able to make a certain amount of money, you're not going to be able to survive in this economy. So it's hard because you don't really make enough money just working. What are you laughing at?
I'm not laughing at you. I totally agree with you. Here is one other wonderful text. Anonymous texter says, a hypothetical here, working next to people who know what they're doing. That's what I said. What if you work with a bunch of people who have no idea what they're doing? That is a very, very fine point. Thank you.
Well, then you can all go to the women's room and gossip about them. That's what you could do. You have those great conversations. That's another thing. We used to have great conversations. If you have an office with a big women's room that people can go in and talk about work, talk about their husbands, their boyfriends, their breakups, all that kind of stuff. And we don't really gather much in the bathrooms at
No,
GBH.
we're still pretty good at gossip on this show off the air, don't you think? Despite those limitations, we're pretty good.
Rochelle from Western Mass, thanks for calling.
Hi, Rochelle.
Hi, great to talk to you.
You too.
I just want to say that I think we're all missing out by not having a work environment that's just part of our daily or weekly living. I think we're social animals, and mentorship isn't something that you necessarily understand you found until you can look back retrospectively.
That's a great point.
I think that, when you're in an environment where you get to know other people, see how they work, learn how to interact with people who sometimes you do or don't agree with, learn things that you don't realize you're learning, then work becomes something that's a lot less transactional. And I think that's the way mentorship happens. I don't think you necessarily decide you're going to be someone's mentor. That's something that happens organically if that relationship exists. And it's really tough to form those sorts of relationships if you're not around people to find out who those mentors might be.
What's the caller's name again? Rochelle? Rochelle, are you in the business? Are you like a therapist or what are you?
So I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in many startups and I've founded a few different companies. And for me, it's always been about the people and the culture that you can create through the people. Cool. And my mentors, I did not know were mentors until I look back now and can recognize the influence that people have had over me.
That was a spectacular call.
That was a
call
great
us
call.
again, Rochelle.
And we have a bunch of good texts, too. Jessica in Denham says, I was a guest speaker to grad students a couple of weeks ago. These young people in their 20s all had some internships or first jobs, but none seem to have basic professional social skills. I think this is because of remote work.
I'm with her.
And then on the downside here, I'm in my mid-30s. My company's got rid of everybody under me that I was mentoring, and everybody at the mid-level above me has also been let go. So there really is a lack of people people available and willing to do any mentoring. And the third one says, I bartend at a bar near an office building. Since people have been working from home, all I overhear from executives how poor the interdepartmental communication has become. So those are three good ones right in a row. You know, the woman that talked about, or I don't even, it might have been a man, the anonymous texter that talked about everybody being laid off. I mean, I was saying before the show, friends of mine, mostly my kids' friends that work in tech, there's been a lot of brutal layoffs in a lot of these big tech companies where they used to have these nice, you know, they'd have breakfast when you came in, they'd have these places you go get yogurt or cereal or eggs, whatever you want, lunches and all that, ping pong tables, pool tables, that they're really, I mean, Meta laid off all these people, you know, Facebook and Meta laid off all these people. A lot of companies are just laying people off left and right, which makes, as one of the previous callers said, you're less inclined to have mentorship going on because you think the company itself is really doing everybody wrong.
Can I get back to the perks though for 1 second? You just mentioned? Well, on its face, while they're on their face, it seems to be a totally pro-worker kind of generous thing. You know why most companies do this?
So you won't leave.
So people stay long hours at the workplace. I mean, there's a method to the madness.
That was a great story a few years ago when some of these Boston law firms were opening free childcare for Saturdays. So that meant the young aspiring lawyers didn't just have to work from 7 to 7 Monday through Friday. They could come in on Saturday and work 7 to 7 too.
Is that true, by the way? Is that true? There was Saturday they were providing childcare?
Yeah, this is a while ago. I don't know if they're
incredible.
still there, but I just remember I might have even written about it, that I thought it was just, you know, a way to get you to work 6 days a week, 12-hour days instead of just 5. Melissa from Cambridge, thank you for calling.
Hey, Melissa.
Hey, good morning. I wanted to really back up what Rochelle was saying. I think as we're moving into an era where it's more about, you know, AI and people losing their jobs, it's more the reason for us to turn to what are the things that, you know, make us human, our relationships. I often mentor young people today because I was mentored when I started my work life back in the 70s. If not for one of the women editors I worked with mentoring me, I would never have had a career. I would never have learned how to write. You know, basically.
By the way, this is Melissa Lutke, right? Melissa Lutke? Is that who you are?
Yes, it is.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Melissa's latest book is, what is it called? Locker Room Talk?
Yeah, it's a great book, Melissa.
Locker Room Talk, a woman's struggle to get inside. But
It's fabulous, but go ahead.
When I went to Sports Illustrated as a reporter, I really felt suddenly I want to learn how to write. And all I'd ever written were term papers, you know, with past tense verbs. And I really needed a mentor to teach me how to write. And if not for that, I never would have had the career that I had in journalism. But I do want to say that the kids I mentor today, I will say it quickly. I tell them the most important thing is to form human relationships.
Amen.
Because if you are laid off, the people you're going to rely on are the people that are your network of friends who are going to help you to find work. Putting a keyword in a computer or AI reading your Indeed application is not going to get you your next job.
Melissa, thank you for the great
fabulous
call.
to hear from you.
We are out of time.
Melissa Lutke, check out her book.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book about being a woman writing in sports and what she put up with. I'm Marjorie Egan, Houston Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trade.
Huge responses from across Europe, from the Danish Prime Minister.
Climate. Picture this all filled with ice.
Security.
Not only do we need to end the war, we also need to prevent the next war.
These are global issues, and to understand them, you need a global perspective. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. Join us for The World each and every weekday.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Rogers Fish Company, offering an array of holiday seafood gifts and gift cards. Their signature double clam chowder is also available for purchase at Market Basket. More at rogersfishcompany.com. And Fixed Dental, offering permanent teeth-on implants customized in their laboratory, enabling their doctors and technicians to oversee every aspect of the smile design. Learn more about all the treatments offered at Fixed at fixeddental.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. Margie's at the library. I'm broadcasting live from the Red Room, as we now call it.
That's
We're
right.
streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I didn't know this. Governor is joining us 2 days before Christmas, 11 to noon. I assume that's at the library.
Yep.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking about disappearing mentorship, inspired by a piece by our former colleague, Karen Miller, in the Boston Globe, and whether the disappearance of that mentorship poses a great threat to young workers down the line. Our number is 877-301-8970.
Jim from Wakefield points out that women's restrooms, which I mentioned before, is a great place for gossiping and talking about your bosses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They have lounges with padded chairs. They also have couches, while men's restrooms just have a trough. So that's one of the reasons, I guess, the women are spending more time in the bathroom. Yeah. And another one says, without any mentorship, the future generation will even be more isolated. Did we read this already? No. Growing up on COVID and reliance on technology during their upbringing will isolate them as professionals. And here's a good one. This gets back to the caller that said he wasn't inclined to be mentoring or being mentored at his company. Businesses today are chasing profits at all costs. Development be damned. My current company is fully remote, but I had a great mentor who was part of a massive layoff 2 years ago. I'm now doing the job of 5 or 6 people. My company's idea of development is LinkedIn learning, training modules. Companies I'd like to jump to simply aren't hiring. So it's a very complicated situation here. But still, I think as Melissa Lucky said before, when a boss is looking around figuring whom to let go, unless it's just one of these like Doge-like things where it's just we're not even paying attention to the quality of the work people do, it's kind of human nature that the people that they see as doing the most work, the people they have the relationships with, the people they like, are lower on the layoff list than the people that they don't know. Isn't that kind of the way it works?
Listen, I agree. And what this all requires, if you just tune in, assuming you believe this notion that mentorship is critical to advancement, particularly for young people who don't even know what questions to ask, so you can't just enter them in a YouTube thing, is you got to be near people who do know. And
Evan,
that means occasionally showing up at work. I'm
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Evan,
well, you did. Three times.
But
you know, makes up for a lot of things.
That's
yeah,
right.
It does. Yeah, go ahead.
Evan from East Hampton, thank you for calling.
Hi, Evan.
Absolutely. Nice to be on. I'm a young professional. I'm 25. I graduated from UMass. And I kind of found that with mentorship, because of the disappearing mentorship, older people in all sorts of fields really want to be mentors. So it's really young people are just like, you just got to go and ask. People love taking others under their wing. It's kind of what I've found.
I love that.
It's just really, it's harder. Yeah, I mean, it's harder definitely with remote work and all that. But because of that, I found older people are like almost yearning to give mentorship.
What have you, give an example in your own life? What is mentorship? How has it improved your work life and your ability to do your work?
So, yeah, I do public relations and that kind of consulting, and just like finding, especially with clients, people who may be in a totally different, field than me, but they're in a different kind of atmosphere, wanting to help me understand, okay, what is this, healthcare client all about? And then learning all about like that kind of thing. Or maybe it's a grocery store chain and figuring out how that kind of whole business works. And just by asking and kind of being proactive, which, is, I think for Gen Z people, it's intimidating.
I'm really glad you called, because we hadn't said what you said, is people should ask. For people who think they're not getting it, sometimes as someone who's been working a long time, like Marty and I have, you're not sure that people always even want it. So I love the notion about having the courage to ask. I think more often than not, you'll get a yes. Evan, that was great. Thanks for the call.
Evan also mentioned that older workers, which we are, Jim, are often yearning for someone to mentor. Do you feel that yearning deep in your soul?
Let me tell you something. And by the way, Marty's making fun of me, and I'm going to respond factually and seriously.
Okay.
There has never once been a time that Marjorie has asked me to mentor her where I've said no. Never. No matter what she's asked, I've
That's
given her
right.
the help that she has
I
needed.
I owe it all to you, Jim.
I didn't say everything, but a lot. You do owe a lot. You do owe
Okay.
a lot to
Dan,
me.
Dan
Thank
from
you.
Deerfield.
Hello, Dan
I would like to
Deerfield.
point out that I got the job first on television before Jim got the job.
No, but
on
you
television,
you
I just
quit.
like to point that out.
No, first of all, you quit.
I did quit for the sake of my children.
Excuse me.
For the sake of my children.
Who got you back on television?
You did after you decided that you needed a little, shall we say, softening in your approach on your show.
I needed a little boost, I might admit.
You thought you might need a girl, and that's what happened.
That's true.
Yeah.
That was my show.
It was your show, but I was hired before you. Just want to point that out.
No, but okay, go ahead.
Dan
She left.
Dan from Deerfield.
She left before she was fired. I mean, let's tell the truth here.
Dan
All right.
from Deerfield,
Hi,
thank you
Dan.
for calling.
It's Dan. But,
I'm sorry.
Don't worry
I'm
about
sorry.
that. Not a problem. The last caller who talked about human contact was really right on, but I think there's an awful lot of kids nowadays who'll get mentorship on a human level if they volunteer. I mean, people are looking for jobs, can't just look for jobs. They've got to go out and do something and show that they're a reliable human being. And
that's a good
we
point.
know a lot of people are in a tough job market, but if they go out and do something that's not just for them, they're going to look better to any employer.
I like that a lot.
Boy, that's a great
Thank you, Dan.
point. And
I
a
like
good
that a
place to
lot.
end because we are almost out of time. Do you have any final thoughts, Jim, yearning to mentor?
Yeah, and even though I've been home this week, if you need anything, you just call me. You don't have to be in person.
Okay.
By the way, in a
Okay.
moment of seriousness
Yes.
here, it's not just mentoring young people. I'm going to say this, and Margie's going to hate this.
No.
I have learned a huge amount from being in your presence. I really have.
Wow.
No, I have. I mean, I have.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm a better gossiper than I was. No, I don't mean to cheapen that. You really, you're good.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
done.
You said I was good. Did you hear that, Jamie?
By the way,
That's what you
thanks to
said.
Kara Miller. Her piece is great.
Great
You should read
piece.
Kara's
She's
piece
a great
in the
reporter,
Boston
great
Globe.
writer.
It's great.
Okay,
It's
coming
great.
up after this quick break, the Culture Show's Jared Bowen is here. He's going to tell us whether the Wicked movie Part 2 is good or not so good, and he just came back from Berlin. We're going to hear all about the museums and the sights and sounds he saw from Germany. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Midwinter Revels lights up the darkest days of the year. This season's solstice celebration draws on Matchless, Gregory Maguire's reimagining of Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Match Girl. Just as he did with Wicked, Maguire imagines there is more than meets the original page. He and director Deborah Wise join us to talk about transforming Matchless into music, ritual, and holiday theater. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Jose Mateo Ballet Theater, presenting The Nutcracker, bringing Clara's dream world to life with festive sets, sumptuous costumes, and spectacular dancing. At the Strand Theater, December 6th through 21st. Ticket info at ballettheater.org. And Rocky Ruggiero, making art and history come to life. Offering travel programs throughout Italy and online learning opportunities on Italian art and culture. Learn more at rockyruggiero.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Marjorie's live at the library. I'm live at home in the Red Room. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're in Brighton tomorrow. I'm actually going to show up for a change. We have live music in Studio 3 with the Levies They are spectacular. We'll tell you more about them a little later in the show. Then back to the library on Friday. The Black Hole Symphony joins us for Live Music Friday. Joined at the library by GBH News Executive Arts Editor, world traveler, and host of The Culture Show, which airs daily here on 89.7 at 2. And for our friends in Western Mass, they can get their dose of Jared and Company Saturdays at 7 p.m. on 88.5 NEPM. Tonight, Jared is hosting an evening with Ethan Hawke at the Great Coolidge Corner Theater. Hawke is the recipient of the 2025 Coolidge Award. Jared, it's good to see you.
It's great to be with you-ish, I guess. Yeah.
No, sort of. And by the way, tonight is sold out, I should say. And it's not streaming or anything, right?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, great. Great event.
He was a great interview.
He's great. With you and with us. He was
tonight.
great. Yes.
So people probably remember Wicked was a huge hit. Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo won all these awards and Oscars and stuff. Well, now there is this Wicked Part 2, which is called Wicked for Good. Here's a little clip from the trailer of Wicked for Good, now in the movie theaters.
The Wicked Witch can't elude us forever. Not with Prince Fiero and his squadron hot on her trail. The wonderful Wizard of Oz. No one believed in you more than I did.
Elphaba, they're coming for you.
So what'd you think? Does it live up to the first one?
I liked it a lot.
Good.
It was funny going into it. I couldn't quite remember what happened in the second half of the musical because, of course, the story of this is it's the film adaptation of the musical, which is adapted from Gregory Maguire's book. And so for the film adaptation, they split it up into two halves, and which a lot of people have made fun of because it's way longer than the actual musical. But they flesh out these stories. And so that's what happens in the second part is we get more of the origin stories of the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, the Lion. This is when Dorothy arrives on the scene. But it really fleshes out, as the title says, Wicked for Good, just this beautiful friendship, the nature of this friendship between Elphaba and Glinda. And even as they're separated, even as Elphaba is dispatched and told to be exiled, she is still... they keep this friendship going, although secretly, because of course Glinda understands that Elphaba is not actually wicked. But there are a lot of political overtones, I think, that are brought in here too. This is about silencing of an entire population. In this case, it's the animals. It's about one figure, the wizard, who is controlling through messaging what an entire population thinks and how they move, and the people who he has alongside him who are executing this. So it's pretty interesting to watch it in this time, especially.
Well, also,
speaking of this time, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say I'm really glad, though, because a lot of movies, people aren't going to the movies like they used to, so you need some big hits to get people back, and physically, as like we were saying before about work, in the theaters.
Well, this will be a very critical time for the theaters because the holiday releases, just like summer, when they get so many people back in. I was heartened. I saw it in a theater in Boston, in this particular theater, the last time I was there, I was the only person in the theater for an afternoon screening.
Oh, Jared.
So it was pretty dispiriting to see that. This one was pretty full because people are so excited about this, and it's something families can go to, and it's warm, and it gets people back into musicals, and I also, just like the first film, I love what the director John Chu has done with this. Like The Wizard of Oz, a lot of it was done on an old stage. The real dancing, and you have the real costumes that really pop. It's like the Technicolor age of movies.
So when you're in a theater by yourself, I don't know if I've ever had that experience, and you don't have to worry about the disease misanthropia or whatever it is you have.
Which you have too now, you told me after the last time.
Bit. Can you eat when you're by yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine.
In fact, it's not misanthropia. I know what you're doing there. It's misophonia. And by the way, just to remind people, you told me the last time you went to a theater, it bothered you too.
We're not talking about me. We're talking about you, Jared.
No, we're talking
Jared, can
about
I ask you one last question?
Do you know about the Red Room?
Okay.
I saw the Red Room.
Did you hear about why he's in the Red Room?
No.
The Netflix hit, Melanie Jones, How to Build a Sex Room. You start with painting it red. So this is mid-construction at Jim's house.
Fine. As I was saying, Jared.
It's a very tight shot, so we can't see the rest of the room.
We don't know what else is in there.
It's about to get tighter.
You can only imagine.
So, Jared, when was the last time you saw the original Wizard of Oz?
It's been years, probably since I was a kid.
So when the question, does it hold up? It's sort of, all of this is an offshoot of one of the great entertainment movies of all time. And I haven't seen it in years either. What are you laughing about now, Marjorie?
A text from the mentoring segment from before. I'm just going to slip this in.
Good.
Zoe and Jamie are both, of course, our producers.
Co-workers.
Can Zoe and Jamie let us know how they are mentored besides showing Jim where the plug is for his modem?
Actually, they didn't show me. Josh showed me where the plug was to my modem.
That's right.
So that would be an incorrect question. Okay, so Jared, there is, I don't want to, Marjorie's having the most fun she's ever had. So I don't want to ruin
by
this.
herself, yeah.
That's right.
There is a
I'm taking
story
control.
that on one hand is incredibly depressing, and on the other hand, the detail in the story is so beautiful. There's a story in the New York Times about these decaying tapes from the Dylans and the Springsteens and great stars from the 60s, 70s, 80s that are being restored or saved by people, or else the masters may decay into disappearance. Tell us what's happening, and tell us about some of the beautiful detail in this great story.
Well, so yeah, what we're recognizing now is this is interesting because often we talk about archives and pieces of paper and how those are stored, or paintings and how those are conserved. But here we're basically talking about magnetic tape, because this is how all of the musical recordings were made, from original sessions going all the way back to Cab Calloway and moving all the way forward to Johnny Cash and even into the present day, Eminem, people of that nature. So they were all done on this magnetic tape. I think most of us can relate to what that is in the pre-digital age.
Yes.
And if you've ever dug some of it out yourself, especially if you have that old reel-to-reel tape on film or something from old videos from grandparents or something, you see that it can stick together and it becomes one solid mass. So this is what a lot of the music studios or record labels that have these big, vast archives are dealing with now, is the fact that this is all disintegrated to such an extent that it becomes this solid mass. It becomes even worse in the 1970s and 80s when they changed the manufacturing and it became even more adhesive.
Oh.
But you have this one figure, they profile Kelly Pribble in the New York Times, who has figured out this very secret proprietary formula for unsticking the stuff so that you can have the original masters from Bob Dylan and people of that ilk. But the problem is this is happening, it's hugely widespread, it's very cost prohibitive to go back and undo all of these. And so in some cases they've lost some of the original masters. So we still have the recordings because a lot of copies have been made, but in some cases the very original one made, somebody pressed record that day in the studio, those no longer exist.
But you know, you touched upon it, but what he does is not only the writer not only profiles that, what is his name, Pribble, is that what you said?
Kelly Pribble, yeah.
Pribble, yeah, but a couple of other people who have invented these sort of almost homemade remedies to the problem, from hair dryers to, you know, something you buy at the hardware store.
Lighter fluid is one of them.
Lighter fluid, exactly, to preserve these incredibly great works of art, and the juxtaposition of the mundane with this brilliance. It's just a wonderful story, and people should read it. I really loved it.
But just so I understand, you're not losing the recordings, obviously, of the original work.
So this is what I think we don't completely understand, because if you remember a number of years ago, in 2008, there was also that big fire at Universal on the back lot.
Sure. Yep.
And what was not so reported at the time was, yes, it affected some of the film sets that were there, including Back to the Future and the big courthouse scene, but there was also a huge vault for Universal Music Group. So a lot of masters were held in this storehouse facility on the lot, and a lot of them burned that day. And Universal Music Group and Universal, they weren't so upfront about this at the beginning. The New York Times later did some major reporting. But it helped us to understand that a lot of the original masters, for people who didn't necessarily go on to become huge stars, so you may not have recordings, we lost those entirely. So that could still be the case for some of these masters, that they haven't made digital reproductions of them. So I don't think we really have a sense of what has been preserved in other forms and what still needs to be done. Because again, I said it's, despite a cheap hairdryer and some lighter fluid, it is pretty cost prohibitive.
But for the Bruce Springsteens and the Bob Dylans and all those
They've
really
all taken care
superstars,
of their...
but we've got all their recordings, and if maybe you lost one of their original tapes, would it really matter that much?
For a lot of people, it won't matter. For true musicologists, they can say, I can absolutely hear the difference. But I guess what I'm concerned about, what about the early,
other people,
Appalachia folk people that were recording that we might have lost?
Okay, so can we go from some of the greats in music history to some of the frauds in music history? Here's a clip of a song called I Run by the group Haven, which went viral on TikTok, which apparently is running afoul of, well, we'll let It's actually pretty great.
Yeah.
So what's the controversy there, Jared Bowen?
I'll be honest with you. This is starting to get confusing following some of these stories. But basically, what this group Haven has done is they have used AI to create this song. And so we've been talking about this, how artists, painters, people are doing this. But part of the problem is they pull in other material in order to make this. Well, as they released this song, I Run, a lot of people recognize that sounds just like Georgia Smith, who is a British star, a British singer. And it turns out it was Georgia Smith that they used as part of this recording. So then they, being Haven, this group got pulled off of Spotify and other platforms as they began to trend for having a pretty catchy song because they were using this music of Georgia Smith. What they then did is strip her tracks out. One of the band members put in their own tracks so that they could basically pass muster with these platforms but move forward. So we're having this fight now. Fight might not be the best term, but you have artists who are fighting for their AI right to move forward by taking the work of other artists. And so these record labels are being tested now because they have to protect their own entities. But I also recognize that some of them are starting to give in. Just on the Culture Show not too long ago, we talked about people like Michael Caine and Matthew McConaughey licensing their voice to AI companies so that they can be used for all manner of things.
How do you feel about that?
Well, if they're participating and they want to do it, I think what we're saying is if you can't beat them, join them. So what the record labels are doing now is they're beginning to license some of their artists as well, because I think they recognize we're going to come to a point where it's going to be really hard to challenge everybody for using everybody. So you might as well license your artists who want to participate so you can make even more money off them when the AI teams decide they do want to use them.
Well, you had somebody steal your voice. Maybe this could be a side gig for you.
Yeah, I tried. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
That was on a for people who didn't hear that. There's a couple of listeners sent me sound from a police procedural made by a Chinese production company, and it was a long series of scores of shows, and I was narrating all the shows, and it really sounded exactly like me. You know, we always talk about the artists who are screwed by AI. Yesterday, the day before, you got to speak to an artist, and we got to speak to him yesterday, the great Ethan Hawke. We asked him about AI, and I thought his answer was just
great.
So perfect. Here's what Hawke had to say.
If I rode a bicycle or a motorcycle 26.2 miles, I would definitely get there faster, but I wouldn't have run a marathon. And what this idea is that we're going to cede our humanity to computers, it makes it seem like the point of life is the result of the action as opposed to the doing of it.
That's great.
We're giving up all the joy of our life in this idea of greed and efficiency.
I think that is perfect a description of the problem. But you seem to be saying, Jared, that if the artists, little by little, obviously not Ethan Hawke, we don't know what he'll do in the future, are buying in, that's the future, right?
I totally see it. This is already the trend. I would love for what Ethan Hawke said to be so true. I would love for everybody to understand, whether you're an actor, part of the process, what it takes to get to the end of that marathon, or you're a painter and to see your hand in that painting by way of the brush and what you physically did on the canvas. But it is just not trending that way. I wouldn't have said this 6 months ago, but what I have seen happen in the last 6 months, the advances that have been made, the infringement that's been made, and the lack of guardrails, I just don't see any way but this way forward, because we have a whole industry that's built on making money, and this is the easiest way to do it.
At some point, I know the Trump administration hasn't wanted to do it, but at some point, I'm hoping we are going to regulate this stuff. There's going to be some guardrails. I know that there's billions and zillions to be made, but at some point,
we'll have to have guardrails at some point. And I've mentioned before that Tennessee is a place where they're trying to install those guardrails because the music industry is the industry there, so they need to protect it. And I don't think that AI will continue to advance at the pace that it has been in the last 2 years, but for now it's just really difficult to keep up. And I think to some degree, whether it's the Matthew McConaughey's or the record labels instituting their own philosophy about this and taking control in their own way. I mean, you could be Judi Dench and and license your voice and then not grant any licenses. That's another way to deal with this. I just don't see a mode where this doesn't happen.
Okay, let's go. I'm sorry, Margaret.
I was going to say, let's go to Germany.
Let's do it.
You were in Berlin over Thanksgiving, so give us the highlights.
Yeah, I had never been to Berlin, and I really wanted to go because it's such a fabulous art city, or so I'd heard, and it really, really is an extraordinary place. I also happen to love history, so if you want to understand the war and the East-West divide, of course, you can still see that very much up close, but this is a city that, as it rebuilt itself, put art at its center. They have an art island, which has always existed. It wasn't as though they rebuilt it after the war. But that's where you'll find the bust of Nefertiti, for example, which is one of the most extraordinary pieces of art in the world that went on view in Germany in 1924 after being discovered in Egypt in 1912. She is the wife of Akhenaten, and if you look it up, you see this figure of this woman with this extraordinary neck and cheekbones and jawline, and her eyes are gorgeous. I mean, just all of the facial figures of this piece of sculpture that is 3,300 years old has come to define so much beauty the world over. When this first went on view, it had everybody beside themselves, whether it was fashion designers or Vogue magazine, having this sense of what beauty meant.
Hey, Jared, what do you mean island? What does that mean?
It's an island. It's an island
Literally?
within Berlin. You cross over the water to get there, and they have various museums on this island.
How
That's
big is
all
the
there
island?
is?
It's very small.
It's very small. Okay.
Yeah.
That is great.
And that's just one part of the city. Across town, you'll find the Gemalde Gallery, which I was so eager to visit because they have 2 Vermeers there in their encyclopedic collection of world art, Italian art, Dutch art, English art, but 2 Vermeers. You know, we have -1 here in Boston.
Exactly.
They have 2. They are extraordinary. They have... I didn't realize their concert hall became the template for concert halls the world over. If you go there, which I did, and actually found a former NEC alum who happened to be performing that night, you see what they call the sort of tiered landscape, the vineyard seating, so that it's all around the stage, and it's tiered like you might find in a winery or something like that. So that everybody is surrounding the orchestra. I was so struck by how much this city has focused on art and in the invention they've put into it, including Frank Gehry designing the interior of a building. The interior, not even the exterior. It was a former bank. I forget. They allow people to just at least peer in and walk in and see what it looks like. And the final thing I would just want to mention is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe, which is a memorial documenting the Jewish Holocaust victims that opened in I think it was 2005, by the American architect Peter Eisenman, and it reminded me so much of my visit to Montgomery, Alabama, and seeing the lynching memorial that we have in terms of the experience you have being in this space. Because when you walk upon it, it's right by the Brandenburg Gate, and it's this wide expanse of basically what look like sarcophagi, and then as you walk into it, you begin to walk down into it, and you realize you're being taken below surface level, and you become very disoriented, and it speaks to the confusion, the horror, the fright, the dismantling of an entire population. It's just an extraordinary piece of work, and he very intentionally did not, at least on those structures, the steel structures, include inscriptions, religious motifs, symbols, names. All of that is found below ground, but this makes it a very simple but explosively powerful look at what happened in that country.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Jared, before you go, we only have 30 seconds left. How are Berliners feeling about the United States in 2025?
I will tell you, I was surprised. I didn't get one question.
Really?
Not one question. I don't know if people don't want to talk about it. I know the group I was traveling with didn't want to talk about it. I know that I, being on vacation, shut down for a few days and didn't watch the news. And I will tell you, it's quite striking to be in another country and not have this oppressive feeling of strife every single day.
Jared, welcome back. It's good to see you. Thanks.
Good to see you too.
Thank you, Jared.
Good luck tonight, by the way. It's really exciting.
It's really fun.
Yeah, we've been speaking with Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor, GBH, host of The Culture Show, which will be live from the Boston Public Library this afternoon right after us. We say goodbye to the folks listening on NEPM. Thank you for tuning in to us. Make sure you tune in as well to the fabulous 413. Monty and Khalees, that starts at 3 o'clock this afternoon. The show continues here in Boston, coming up after the new news on 89.7 GBH. Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem. She's going to tell us about the hoped-for peace deal that didn't happen in Ukraine and ask whether this is really about peace for the United States negotiators or just about making lots of money. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the trustees, presenting Winter Lights, a celebration of seasonal sparkle with light displays in Stockbridge and Canton, Massachusetts, running Wednesday through Sunday nights through early January. Advance tickets required. More at thetrustees.org/winterlights.
Every story has its twists and turns, so let the PBS NewsHour set the record straight. Get the facts you need from America's most trusted news source. Don't miss PBS NewsHour, weeknights at 6 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 2 of BPR, live more or less from the Boston Public Library. In a piece last week for The Atlantic, national security expert Harvard's Juliette Kayyem called the attacks on National Guard troops in D.C. terrible and avoidable. She'll join us on that, plus the president's latest threats to Venezuela and more.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll check in with Embrace Boston's Imari Parish Jeffries on the president's latest racist remarks, this time about people from Somalia. And we'll hear from Imari and the Reverend Jay Williams from the Union Combined Parish about the launch of a new MLK Beloved Community Weekend. All that and our Two More Things segment ahead. Hour number 2, BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration is standing by its campaign of targeting and killing the crews of small boats accused of smuggling drugs from South America to the United States. However, questions are mounting about the legality of those strikes, and critics say they believe a war crime was committed in at least one such encounter on September 2nd. It's still unclear who exactly gave each order to use deadly force, even though Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been visibly at the forefront of the overall campaign. NPR's Deirdre Walsh reports on Hegseth's account during President Trump's cabinet meeting yesterday about the September 2nd deadly strikes in the Caribbean.
He said he gave the initial order to strike the boat and then said he learned the details about the second strike a couple of hours later and said it was a decision made by Admiral Frank Bradley, who leads U.S. Special Operations Command. While Hegseth stressed he personally didn't make the call for a follow-on strike, he said Bradley had the complete authority to do so.
NPR's Deirdre Walsh. The Kremlin says some aspects of the latest U.S. proposal for ending the war in Ukraine are unacceptable, but Russia remains open to further talks. This follows 5 hours of high-level discussions in Moscow yesterday involving Russian President Vladimir Putin, President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Here's NPR's Charles Maines.
Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov rejected the idea Russia had dismissed the U.S. peace plan outright, saying Putin's give and take over U.S. proposals was a normal part of the negotiating process. Peskov said Moscow remained open to future meetings to narrow differences, but that Russia preferred diplomacy out of the public eye. The comments came after a late-night marathon meeting between Putin and White House envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner at the Kremlin failed to reach a compromise. The Americans had sought Putin's support for a revised U.S. peace plan for Ukraine, one that included more input from Ukraine and Europe after an earlier draft was criticized as heavily weighted in Russia's favor. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
Republican Matt Van Epps is the winner of a special election for a U.S. House seat in Tennessee. The race drew millions of dollars in outside spending and national attention as well. NPR's Stephen Fowler reports Democrats are also claiming a victory of sorts.
President Trump won Tennessee's 7th congressional district last November by about 22 percentage points. This week, Matt Van Epps won by 9. After super PACs from both parties poured millions of dollars into this high-profile contest, Democrats say the 13-point overperformance by their candidate Afton Bain is a good sign for 2026. In 60 state legislative and congressional special elections this year, Democrats have improved from their 2024 margins by an average of 13%. Stephen Fowler, NPR News.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 221 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Homeowners in Boston are preparing for the possibility of a double-digit property tax increase. That's unless Boston Mayor Michelle Wu can work her magic and get lawmakers on Beacon Hill to shift more of the tax burden onto commercial properties. The problem is the lawmakers are right now on holiday break. Master List reports that the senators blocked the measure last year, questioning the need for it, and it's been in limbo ever since. In a letter to Boston City councilors, the mayor wrote that taxes for the average single-family home in the city are expected to be up by 34%. Now, that's from 2023 to 2026, and residents are facing serious financial hardship. She says that the average increase for homeowners next year, 2026, will be 13%, or $780. Meanwhile, taxes on commercial property are expected to decline by 6%. New tax bills go out on January 1st. And the UMass Amherst system has announced that it's renaming its campus at Mount Ida in Newton. Officials say the campus, which has been the Mount Ida campus of UMass Amherst since the university acquired the property when Mount Ida College closed in 2018, is now known as the Charles River campus of UMass Amherst. Name change will officially take effect in January. The renaming follows a 6-month stakeholder input process with feedback from students, faculty, staff, and university governance groups. 36 degrees outside our studios here in Brighton. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM. On the latest episode of Tech Unheard, ARM CEO and host Renee Haas talks to Jayshree Ulal, host of cloud networking company Arista Networks, about how tech and AI are helping to shape the future of computing.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are sort of live from the Boston Public Library. Jim is still home in the Red Room, recovering from COVID, but he's going to be back tomorrow. We are streaming as usual at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back in Brighton tomorrow with live music from Lee V's, a couple of people from Guster, the band. It's going to be great. And on Friday, we'll be back at the Boston Public Library. The Black Hole Symphony joins us for Live Music Friday. The mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, is going to be with us on December 16th. She'll be here at the library from 1 to 2, and Governor Maura Healey will be with us from 11 to noon on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Joined on Zoom by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, Juliette's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Hey, Juliette.
Hello, greetings from California.
Oh,
Hi,
I forgot.
Juliette.
That's right. Hi.
Thank you for zooming in. So, Juliette, we've been reading that we really didn't get anywhere peace-wise when Jared Kushner and Wickfield, or whatever his name is, Witkoff, went over there to meet with the Russians. But what's really disturbing is Wall Street Journal, a conservative business newspaper, is writing that this really is just all about people that are affiliated with the Trump administration making money in Ukraine. It was really disturbing.
It was absolutely disturbing, and kudos to the Wall Street Journal for doing what we tend to know about Trump's foreign policy, but really drilling down on it, which is the personal benefits that Trump team, Trump family tend to get with a number of these sort of inexplicable from the U.S. Interest perspective decisions. I should say that for example, you sort of wonder, why is Trump releasing the former president of
Honduras,
that he just released, who was responsible for gazillions of dollars of cocaine and drugs coming to the United States. It actually, if you drill down, because the reporting has been good, it has to do with crypto. Like everything has like a tie to some monetary benefit. So the Wall Street Journal says what begins to explain what is going on with Witkoff. Why is he so, in best case scenario, played by the Russians or in collusion with the Russians? When you're a negotiator, the best you could say by him is that he's naive rather than evil. That's not a great place to be. Marco Rubio has been written out. That would be the normal role of the Secretary of State. And then Jared Kushner, who we were told was not going to have any role in this administration, given his billion-dollar deals with the Saudis and the Middle East. And there he is sitting with Witkoff. What we know is that the provisions of the very pro-Russian negotiation, which is sort of off the table now because it got exposed, had provisions around infrastructure and building that were steered to a separate fund that would then be administered by the Trump administration. And that is the piece that everyone says, well, that's the Witkoff family piece, right? I mean, that is PIECE and PEACE. They want peace for a reason, because they want the minerals and the money.
And the reason, I was just going to say really quickly, and the reason that we wonder why is the United States so involved in this when the Europeans are obviously heavily involved now with Russia. I know the Ukrainians want our security and some weaponry through other different channels, but this piece argues is because the Americans want to beat the Europeans to the business deals.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and the Europeans know it, and with no interest and no security interest that makes sense to the Europeans, right? You're gonna approve Russia. I mean, the original draft, we think everything is now being negotiated, and I just heard in the run-up to this segment that that both parties are not there yet. But the original draft, which we believe was drafted by the Russians, sent to Witkoff, who, remember, I like real estate lawyers. I know real estate lawyers. His background is real estate, and his background is the Trump Gulf. He's a member of Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
That is how he got the position. Jared Kushner is the son-in-law who's now a multi-billionaire because of what he's dealt with his using the presidency to support his economic gain. The Europeans look at it as, wait, you're about to give pieces of Ukraine that Russia has not clearly won.
Yes.
Right? So you're telling Ukraine, give up. You've had this 2+ year, 3+ year fight. So none of it made sense. Clearly, people within the administration wanted to expose it, wanted to expose Witkoff. And the only question is why is Witkoff, who, once again, at best, is an idiot because he bought into what the Russians were trying to narrate, at worst is in collusion with the Russians. Why is he still at the table? And the only answer is because Trump too. I mean, in my mind, Trump, the Trump family sees the benefits to Witkoff.
Well, I would say there's probably one more reason. I would argue that Putin has told Trump, I like this guy. This is who I want here.
Yeah.
I've told this story before. I'll tell it one more time. I've never heard this in my lifetime. In a not so recent visit with Putin, Witkoff went in with no translator.
I know.
The translator was Putin's translator. That's how much skill and let me say, the only person who looks happier when he's in the presence of Putin than Donald Trump is Witkoff. The smiles on his face yesterday were like he died and went to heaven. We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
No, I mean, you think about this man's trajectory in his career, right? I mean, this is what I think, I think we had this conversation last time and Trump has subsequently had a cabinet meeting, the sycophantic.
We're going to deal with that later, Go ahead.
But you have to remember, besides Marco Rubio and possibly Treasury Secretary Bessent, there is absolutely no one at that table who should be at that table, and they know it. In other words, their career trajectories were infomercials. If you're Kennedy, Secretary Noem was doing dental commercials. Secretary Kennedy was in his weird world of
having sex with Olivia Nuzzi.
Yeah.
Sure, he was busy.
I would like an entire segment about that because
so
would
we haven't talked nearly enough about that.
So it's so bad.
Okay, can we move on? We'll talk about, Margie and I are going to talk about the cabinet meeting in a little while. Part of that cabinet meeting yesterday was Trump not just supporting Pete Hegseth in the dispute he's found in, but suggesting a willingness on his part, meaning Trump's, to carry out strikes on land in Venezuela. Here's a little bit of Trump. I can't handle this anymore. This is just...
And if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea.
By the way, apologies to listeners. The sound situation here is an embarrassment, and I apologize. So he basically said, we will attack on land like we attack on sea. Hegseth's great. So the latest thing, just to bring people up to speed, from my understanding is, in light of the fact that after they denied there was a second strike, they admitted there was a second strike. So now, since Hegseth was this macho little boy who was saying he was on top of everything, he now says at the cabinet meeting yesterday, I left the room early, and it's Admiral Bradley's fault. Bradley, I think his name is. Isn't it Bradley? I think it is. So it seems to me, as an inexpert observer, that not only is Pete Hegseth in deep crap, but frankly, Admiral Bradley, who carried out the order, may be in deep crap himself, no?
Yeah, and he's going to the Hill today. This is a really interesting issue, and I just give some background based on my experience and talking a lot to people. Hegseth isn't qualified to be Secretary of Defense. Anything, but even when the Ukraine and Gaza stuff was happening, he was focused on, firing adjunct professors at West Point or going after statues and stuff. He's just not smart enough to take an expansive view. But he does like aggression. Whether that's a strategy or not, I don't know.
Secretary of War.
Secretary of War, and he spent a lot of time on being called that. So these attacks. So I want to just put these attacks in perspective. They are legally suspect from the beginning. There is no war. There's no war declaration. The shooting and killing of suspects is first. You justify it by whether you have alternative means. In this case, the Coast Guard, it has been historically the alternative means. I saw a statistic yesterday that something like 70% of boats that the Coast Guard approaches that they suspect are drug runners are not. So that gives you a sense that there's lots of boats out there, and we should be careful about who we're killing. But what clearly is a war crime is what's called the follow-on order, which is people have survived a mission, an attack, and they are no longer a threat, and you go after them again. It is. It's like black and white. Like it's like literally the Geneva, like every rule of law. So someone has exposure for what's the follow-on. So I don't want to debate the original thing. Let's just debate the follow-on, because that's what we have now. Hegseth originally embraces himself in these attacks. I know everything. I'm watching them. Remember, he's posting these less than 5 minutes after they occur. So I don't want to hear that he walked away. He's getting a high off of this, and we saw this over the weekend. Admiral Bradley comes from covert ops. He's from the covert ops world. Most people would have never heard of him. He's not a public figure. He is he's 1 month from retirement.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He is the scapegoat. Remember, they lost the admiral who oversaw Southern Command.
He retired early.
He retired
and
early.
We haven't heard from him at all.
These guys, they got to get over themselves. We need to hear from them. What were they hearing? What were they being commanded of? But Bradley definitely has legal exposure, because if you listen to what Trump and Hegseth said, they are throwing him under the bus. So if I were a senator or House member, Republican or Democrat, I'll get to that in a second, I would give him full immunity. Tell us what happened in that room. Did Hegseth
Can I say one thing about this, by the way, about this follow-up? I don't know the proper terminology, unlike you. Two things. The former general counsel to, I guess, the Pentagon or the Army, who's often on CNN, says in whatever the document is that everybody reads, the example in the military, the example they pick are people who are shipwrecked after an initial attack and are still living. That's the example of a war crime.
Shipwrecked sailors, they call them.
Right, that's right. And number two, the irony, for those of you who are getting off on Donald Trump threatening Senator Kelly and those 5 other veterans in that video, this is exactly what they were talking about. And if Admiral Bradley had watched the damn video, maybe those 2 people wouldn't be dead and he and Hegseth wouldn't be in trouble.
Well, the question the question I have is, why did Bradley think follow-on orders were authorized?
I agree.
That's
completely.
not coming from him, right? That is coming from an operational decision about it. So, and then remember, Hegseth had been on air saying, sort of kill them all. I want to talk about Hegseth. There's, lots of DC politics going on about what cabinet secretaries are going to survive into the new year. I think it's pretty clear Kash Patel will be gone only because they already have someone in there that they like, and he's just too much of an embarrassment. I think Noam is likely to not survive much longer, Secretary of Homeland Security, for a variety of reasons, but also because I think this killing of the National Guard member is going to come back to haunt her, because the guy came in through asylum on Trump. But I want to talk about Hegseth, because I spent a lot of time with the military, conservatives, more conservative, maybe not MAGA. I think Republican congressmen and senators, because they're being very aggressive against Hegseth, are probably hearing from their constituencies that are members of the military now, saying this guy is about as dangerous as you can imagine. And you see him; he doesn't seem well to me. I mean, he puts out a meme over Twitter about killing people. He gets a high off of killing. That's not what normal people are like. And I suspect that one of the reasons why you're getting bipartisan condemnation and you're getting hearings already is that the Republicans now view him as expendable. Trump is now at 30%. We're all seeing the numbers, but that they view no one is gonna be upset at the department and might actually be happy. And I think the Republicans are starting to recognize that from their conservative constituency. People are scared. People aren't scared of this guy. They are scared that this guy is in charge, because he is so not, he's not right. And I mean that honestly. No one should get a high off of killing.
Remember that ridiculous performance in front of all these men and women that have given their lives to the military, by the hundreds. They all had to come back from all around the world to listen to Hegseth tell them they should be in better shape. And he was embarrassed by people that were fat and all this gross stuff, and people's facial hair. I mean, really. And then he goes.
Well, let's remember his qualifications. He was a drunken sexual abuser, is what we learned about him. If we didn't know,
whose own mother said
exactly.
His own mother called him one of the worst people she'd ever met.
I saw his Christmas picture. Someone had posted it, or like someone applauding him, like this is success. He has 6 kids that no way could one woman have had them all. You get a sense of he was having an affairs, he was impregnating people. So he has like 6 kids that are, none of them are twins, that, like the rules of biology suggest that, there's a lot of overlap there.
I think he's been married 3 times, hasn't he? Been married 3 times, I believe.
I only say that because I do think that's fair game for what he's doing to women in the military. In other words, I think the sexual harassment, the affairs, the lack of discipline, that he has sexually is definitely, it takes some nerve to say that women who are, fighting wars and dying for us, are not the image of the soldier that this country needs. I mean, he is not the image of the soldier that this country needs.
So speaking of image, though, that we do need is just, you wrote a good piece in the Atlantic. People have read and learned a lot about Sarah Beckstrom, who obviously was a National Guard member from West Virginia, who was killed at age 20 in Washington, D.C. Andrew Wolf is the second National Guards person. He was in critical condition. He may still be, but his condition is improving. You wrote a piece about the assignment of National Guards people to be doing police work in cities. Tell us what you wrote, Juliette.
I wrote another piece that gets me into trouble because I got very criticized for this from the right. That's okay. That is the nature of a democracy. But when something like this happens, one needs to look at the totality of what occurred. So there's the immigration and the killer. And what he did with the CIA in Afghanistan and his process of getting here. I was more focused on the target, which was, of course, the National Guard. And what I discovered, and I really, I've been critical of this deployment anyway, but, it's like it's the Thanksgiving Eve. And I start looking, I was like, I hadn't realized that in a number of the pieces of litigation that commanders of the National Guard had been warning their superiors that the National Guard members deploy without a clear mission, without a clear rules of engagement, picking up trash because the mission has changed from crime to beautification, right? That there was worries of the exposure because, look, when you think about troop protection and protecting people deployed, you look at it through the lens of why are they being deployed. Mission readiness, as the military calls this, mission readiness has to do with, well, what's the mission? We can't, so Trump instinctively says we're going to throw out 500 more National Guard members. I don't know what that does because you can't define readiness without knowing what the mission is. And the mission is unclear, mission creep, political. And I think someone needed to say in the middle of this, because apparently no one wanted to hear it from the White House, which went after me. But look, I mean, you can't throw the military into politics, into the arena. More propensity to be the target of unjustified political violence. So,
Juliette, could you give us an update? I'm not sure. I know that Trump ordered an additional 500 members of the Guard to Washington right after this, but was there not a court ruling that said that? So what is the status of that in D.C.?
So there is a court ruling where the lower court said that this was an unconstitutional deployment and based it actually on a little bit on the mission creep thing, said that, it's just an unclear deployment. Because remember, D.C. is unique. There are California cases going on, Illinois cases going on. D.C., because of its status, the president has much greater authority, or essentially line authority, or over National Guard. So legally, it was always viewed as the best case for the Trump administration, and still they lost. They lost on the Friday before the killings on a Tuesday, but the judge, as judges will do, stayed the order for appeal so that they were still deployed during this period. Then Trump takes advantage of the horror that we saw happen and does two things. One is deploys 500 more troops and then closes our border to a bunch of it's a Muslim ban with Venezuela and Haiti, and there was a couple other randoms, but which we are already under a ban. So we'll see what the legal status is of all of those, but
By the way, before we go, I want to reference back to something Juliette touched upon. Our colleagues pulled this from PolitiFact. A 2024 Coast Guard report found that approximately 27% of the time Coast Guard members boarded vessels suspected of smuggling drugs.
Thank you.
None were found. One out of 4 cases.
27. I'm sorry, I was misreading the statistics.
Well, whatever.
Okay, good.
I mean, still, that's a huge.
It's one in 4.
Huge,
so you
and that's why you board a ship rather than bomb a ship.
So you figure we've done 18 or 16 kill orders. So think 1 in 4 of those are, just based on the evidence, are innocent. Even if you give 3 or 4 are drug runners, why aren't you using the Coast Guard to extradite? But also, I don't believe that the Department of Defense is going through the normal channels of determination of whether they're drug boats. Some of them were not even Venezuelan boats. I don't believe any of it at this stage. And I as I say to Congress, give Bradley complete immunity and find out what happened in the room.
Juliette, enjoy California. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much,
guys. See you next week. Bye.
We've been speaking with Juliette
And
Kayyem.
you feel better.
Thanks.
National security expert, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to speak with Imari Parish Jeffries of Embrace Boston and the Reverend Jay Williams of Union Combined Parish. They are here to preview some big events coming up for the organization ahead of the MLK Day and the nation's 250th anniversary, birthday. We're also going to talk to them about something President Trump said yesterday about Somalis. I'm Marjorie Egan, Easton Browdy, listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Listen to be immersed.
Some Salvadorian rum, some horchata.
Listen to be transported.
After a 3-hour flight, you land in Guantanamo.
Flight attendants prepare for arrival.
Listen to get perspective.
And if that's what mattered, what didn't matter? What was just noise?
Listen to All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And American Repertory Theater with Wonder, a new musical for the whole family based on the best-selling book and beloved movie. This holiday season, Wonder celebrates the power of kindness. amrep.org. And Davis Malm. Their tax lawyers are committed to your most taxing matters. Learn more at davismalm.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. Marjorie's live at the library. I am live at home. I'm actually going to come in tomorrow. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're in Brighton tomorrow. We have live music from the Levies. We'll tell you more about them before the show is over. They'll be with us in Studio 3. Back to the library on Friday. And in December, on the 16th, the mayor will join us for an hour of Ask the Mayor. And on the 23rd, the governor will join us for an hour of Ask the Governor. Embrace Boston, as you know, is a nonprofit behind the MLK and Coretta Scott King Embrace statue on Boston Common and so much more, is gearing up for MLK Day next year in a big way with a coalition of groups putting together a big weekend of events. We'll talk about those. We're joined now by Imari Parish Jeffries. Imari is the president and CEO of Embrace Boston. Reverend Jay Williams, who I think Margie and I saw for the first time doing a spectacular job at the Mel King Memorial.
Yes.
He's the lead pastor at the Union Combined Parish, co-chair of MLK Jr. Memorial Breakfast Committee. Reverend, Imari, it's great to have you both. Thanks so much for your time.
Great seeing you both.
Thank you both. Thank you both for coming in. So, okay, we're going to get the bad news out of the way first before we get to the good news, because President Trump had this cabinet meeting yesterday, and he spoke about Somalian immigrants, and we want to play you a little sound of what the President of the United States said about Somalian immigrants. Here it is.
They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country is no good for a reason. we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage.
Okay. Imari, what are we to make of this? He's the president of the United States.
I'm at a loss of words. I shouldn't be at a loss of words. We've come to expect or have low expectations of things that come out of the office of the president these days. I'm worried about that type of divisive language that continues to come out of this administration. We've heard this before in Nazi Germany. We've heard this before during the Jim Crow South, especially on the eve of this MLK holiday. We're reminded of the importance of language, the importance of belonging as language to unite, and this is the opposite. And so our coalition is designed, especially in Boston, in a place that's always been at the vanguard of belonging, to remind our city, our region, our country that the way out of this, the way forward is for us to embrace each other.
You know, Reverend, you have a lot of families who you deal with. What is a little kid, a black kid, a white kid, what kind of reaction do they have when they hear this, fleeting on Twitter or something like that from the most powerful person in the world?
Yeah, it's wrong, it's evil, it's unjust, and we are speaking a message that no one is garbage, no one is trash, no one is disposable, dispendable. Everyone has sacred value, sacred worth. Everyone is created in the image of the one who loves us into freedom. Everyone belongs. Everyone is a child of God. So this is the message that we speak back to an unjust administration that continues to articulate just divisive, dangerous rhetoric as a pretext for whatever is coming next.
Can I weigh in on this for a second here? I want to compliment the New York Times coverage of this. We've spoken to Margaret Sullivan a lot, who I think is our favorite media critic, and the media tends to downplay, in our opinion, the worst of Donald Trump. In this piece written by Zolan Kano-Youngs and Sean McCreech, first paragraph, they use the words like xenophobic, his anti-immigrant bent, his nativism, this is Trump's, his long history of insulting black people, his unapologetic bigotry, which is exactly what it is, and credit to them for telling the truth. But the second thing is, while I agree with every word you both said, the long-lasting impact and the permission this gives for people to emulate this nauseatingly racist man in the White House is it doesn't just disappear when the day disappears. It lingers, Imari. Does it not, or am I being overly dramatic here?
No, you're not being overly dramatic. It does linger, and times where I've been on the show, we talked about the backlash that happens after great advances in civil rights movement, and we're in the. I mean, I hate to say this, but we're in the middle of this backlash in the reconstruction that happened after the murder of George Floyd. We're in the midst of it. And so this type of dangerous rhetoric, this type of reemergence of Jim Crow language is what we're living in. I was talking to Adrian Walker a few weeks ago. We had dinner, and he was saying that in his lifetime he thought 9/11 was going to be the worst catastrophe that many of us were going to live through. And I swear every 5 years it continues to get worse. This actually feels more dangerous than it did during the pandemic, and it's weird to say that. Upon reflection, the idea that the type of atrophy, the poverty of empathy that is happening right now, at least during the pandemic, we were worried about each other. There was a rallying of the truth around what we were going to do to take care of each other. We were applauding essential workers. We were concerned about each other. And now the idea is that masked individuals, masked vigilantes can roll up in unmarked vehicles and snatch people, including American citizens, off the streets, and we're not even blinking. That soldiers who signed up to defend our country, I was in the military for 5 years, are marching through major American cities, and we're not even blinking. It's not upsetting us. And so the atrophy, the poverty of empathy is what worries me, how different it is from 5 years ago.
Well, before we get to MLK and what's going on for the celebration, again, because you're a preacher, what do you tell people what we should be doing? We had the No Kings rally, and people are outside the immigration place up in Burlington. I mean, there are people that are protesting, but what should we be doing?
Well, we have to be coming together like we're doing with this coalition because, right, it's clear that 200 years of democracy can be threatened in an instant, right? So it's a long game to build, and it's an easy, quick game to destroy, and that's what's happening in the Trump administration, part two, right? This white lash, this backlash to black folks, brown folks, immigrants succeeding in the country. So what we're doing, right, is to say we need to draw closer together. We need to lock arms, stand side by side, and begin the work now of rebuilding, reclaiming our country that's grounded in, right, a re-narration of King's legacy, that oftentimes, right, we get to MLK Day and it's just a quick kumbaya moment of saying, I have a dream, and we forget the long arc of King's actual witness, and that, his life was taken from him in the midst of the Poor People's Campaign, where he was focused on, right, the least of these, as we say in the church, right? So not only is, the rhetoric that's coming out of the White House, anti-immigrant, anti-black and brown, it's nativistic and such, it's also like classist in a way that continues to villainize those who were born with much less than Trump was born with and are struggling to make ends meet. So the snap cuts, all of these things, right? We have to do the work of both securing the foundation that is being destroyed in our midst and preparing to rebuild once, hopefully this is behind us, the administration.
We're talking to Reverend, that's the voice of Reverend Jay Williams, the Union Combined Parish, and Imari Paris Jeffries of Embrace Boston. Starting with you, Reverend, as co-chair of the breakfast, what's happening on Martin Luther King weekend next month?
We are coming together as a coalition led by 4 organizations to say that we're stronger together. That on Friday, Project 351 will have a service day, rather on Saturday, and then on Sunday, the Embrace Friends and Family Gala, and then on Monday, the MLK Memorial Breakfast, the 56th annual, and the Boston Children's Chorus annual concert at Symphony Hall. So we're saying, look, these major events that have happened, right, with awareness of one another, have more impact and can have a way of leading the way nationally by coming together. So there's a host of other things that are happening, other organizations. So you can go to mlkboston.com. We're curating like a list, a calendar of all the events that are happening around the city so that we're aware. We might deepen our partnerships, we might increase our relationships, and say that we're not going to back down, we're not going to be bullied, but in fact, we're going to do what Boston has always done, right? We're going to lead the revolution of love, of liberation, of joy in a way that sets the tone for the nation.
Give us that website one more time.
mlkboston.com.
So, Imari, tell us more about this day of service.
Well, Project 351 is an organization that was started when Governor Patrick was governor, and it's made up of young people from all 351 towns and cities in Massachusetts. And it's an amazing organization, and so they do this annual day of service, a huge rally in Faneuil Hall, and they go around the city to serve. And the alumni of this program are the future leaders of the Commonwealth. And so they have been a partner of ours for the last few years. We actually are in the same building in downtown, and we are excited for them to be the service partner. And so on the website, you can sign up to do service alongside of the young people as a day of service. And we really are thinking about this united front in context of many of the King era legislation being dismantled. We knew in 2013 Shelby was the first part of the Voting Rights Act to be dismantled, and most recently in November, the second part, Louisiana, that was the second part of the Voting Rights Act where they were continuously diminishing the power of the federal government to regulate that act. And so we've already seen 30% of the legislation that King is attributed to be diminished during this time. And so this is in context, this celebration is in context, and we want to be mindful, right? There's a lot of people out here struggling with fuel assistance, rising costs of food, housing. This is not a celebration where we don't take lightly the struggles of everyday people. And so we are taking that into consideration and raising money for organizations to continue to do the good work.
Can I, every time Project 351 is brought up, I feel I have to say, I've done work with them, and I want to echo what has been said here. Governor Patrick embraced this thing. A woman who is just Carolyn Casey, who runs this thing. And I've been to these events. They're eighth graders, as Imari mentioned, who are chosen, and the Reverend mentioned, they are chosen by their home communities from each of the 351 cities and towns. They become ambassadors, and this is not just a one-day thing, even though there is this one day of service. It's a year-round thing where they become leaders in their community, encouraging their fellow students to get engaged. And it is a hugely important way to begin to heal this incredibly fractured nation. And you should check it out. Project 351, they do brilliant work, and I'm so glad they're part of this.
We weren't going to ask you about this, but because Jim and I talk about it a lot, we've talked about it with Lee Pelton too, from the Boston Foundation. There's increasing social segregation, increasing racial segregation, money segregation, all this segregation. You said being in the military for 5 years, which does better than a lot of places, bringing people together. But we talked a lot about what the United States would be like if there was a mandatory, not the military, but a mandatory service when you're 18 years old, and everybody had to go, white, black, poor, rich, all that, for a year. I thought that not only would you get a lot accomplished, but you'd have a mixing that you don't really get because of such segregation in the country. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, MLK said service is love with its work clothes on. Right, so let's go to work together to build the community, the beloved community, where everyone belongs. So yes, I mean, this idea that we need to do more, and we often have debates about politics, but when you are able to just work alongside somebody to do some good, there's a capacity to transcend partisanship, differences of religion and culture. So yes, service matters.
I mean, it may never happen, but I think it would be a life changer.
Yeah.
And MLK said everyone can lead because everyone can serve.
Yes.
And speaking of that, I have on my City Year watch.
There you go. City Year's great.
In honor, and Charlie Rose gave me this watch, and Charlie Rose and Robert Lewis Jr. started the Street Worker Program in the 90s and went on to be some of the founding staff members with Carolyn Casey. I was one of the early core members at Jumpstart. I did 2 years of service after my military service. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I think if folks can't do military service, national service in the form of AmeriCorps, and as we know, AmeriCorps and national service has also been cut. And so part of the Great Society programs, actually before the Great Society programs, President Kennedy started the Peace Corps, which then VISTA, which was a domestic version of Peace Corps, which predated AmeriCorps, was this idea that people would spend a year service serving their country. Ask not what you can do for what your country can do, but what you can do for your country, right? This idea that you invest in this democracy with your hands, your body, and your spirit. And so I believe it's the right thing to do, so much so that, I went from military service to my country, to service to my community. And I think it's the right thing for every single able-bodied person to do.
Imari, one other thing that I think has a connection to what you guys are doing, you and so many others are doing this week in all these organizations. We've talked to a lot of people, the governor, the mayor yesterday, actually, Keith Lockhart, about the 250th anniversary. What is Everyone 250? Who is that, and what does that mean?
Yeah, and this is a part of Everyone 250's campaign, and Reverend Jay and I, and Andres Holder, and Carolyn, and all of us who are part of this MLK weekend, we are Everyone 250. And it's this idea that everyone's founding story did not start in 1776, and even if they did, their story wasn't written down in paper or stone and steel. There's no monument that represented the beginning of their story, and some of the people who were here were not emancipated during that time. And so we want to be able to tell all these founding stories, right? And during the bicentennial, the social media of the time was regular TV. And so what was brainwashing people was TV. Those three top shows were All in the Family, Rich Man, Poor Man, and Sanford and Son. We had a 12% inflation rate. We had a presidential crisis. That Watergate happened. And during the bicentennial, Bostonians were throwing empty barrels of tea to protest high gas prices. And so they used the bicentennial as an opportunity to tell a new American narrative. And so part of our coalition is to begin the year of telling a new American narrative. Boston has the only right to the King's founding story. They met here, they fell in love here. And so the MLK Breakfast is the longest standing
commemoration to MLK's legacy. So was founded in 1970, and our keynote, and it's co-presented by the church that I pastor, Union United Methodist Church, the combined parish. We're now multi-site, along with St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church in Roxbury. And we, in 1970, is actually founded by two women of both churches, one from each church, who said we need to do something to concretize the legacy. So as we lean in now and as expand our witness of MLK beyond just Martin to include Coretta, right? It definitely builds on that legacy that women in many ways have always led the way. And the keynote for the MLK Breakfast this year is Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's also been one of the speakers featured at the Embrace Juneteenth celebration. So, right, she's the curator, of course, of the 1619 project, A New Origin Story, which was an intentional choice, right? During the semi-quincentennial, where our focus will be on 1776, we're trying to re-narrate how we understand our beginnings and where do we go from here by saying, yes, enslaved black folks are the founders in many ways of this nation, and we need to tell a different story that emancipates us all.
So we only have a minute left, and I'm sorry to compress it so much. I heard Nicole speak for the first time out at Babson a couple of weeks ago, and it was a bunch of journalists. And the final question was from Washington Post health journalist who said, Nicole, what are you hopeful about? And there was a really long pause, and her response was, I'm hopeful about nothing. And she mentioned the statistic that Imari mentioned about the undoing of the civil rights legislation in the 60s and 8 months of Trump, and said it could take 70 years to get back to where we were before Trump. Are you, starting with you, Reverend, you only have 30 seconds each, are either of you more hopeful than Nicole is about the future of this country?
Yeah, another prophet philosopher, Cornel West, says we're prisoners of hope, right? And I pastor a church. Sunday, Advent, the new beginning of our liturgical season, the focus is hope. So we begin always with hope. We always begin with hope, which is not mere optimism. And W.E.B. Du Bois said, he clings to a hope that is not hopeless, but it is unhopeful. He wrote this in The Souls of Black Folks. It's not hopeless, but it is unhopeful, which is to hold a dialectic, a tension between, yes, shit is really bad. Right? Like,
Imari, you want to...
And hope it doesn't mean we have to leave.
Imari, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, I should have went first. I don't want to go going after a preacher, Jim. That's a
tough. It's tough.
Especially one who curses every now and then.
It's not fair.
Well, I run an organization called Embrace, and this is an organization built upon a promise and a hug. Psychologists say that if you hold a hug for at least 30 seconds, you'll feel the psychological effects of love kicking in. And so when you run an organization that's built on that type of science, you have to be hopeful. And in that spirit, I'm sorry that you're not here today. I brought you guys gifts, as I always do when I'm here. And so you don't get to choose the books.
That's right. I get to choose.
I'm giving them to Marjorie.
Thank you very much.
Always some books on my reading list for you guys. Thank you for having us as always.
Thank you.
You know what? I can give this to Jim. I read this, and you know what? It changed everything I
don't you say the name quickly?
The New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander. She's written a bunch of great books.
Great.
But talk about learning everything and having my perspective totally changed. She did that. It was
Reverend,
great.
it's great
anyway,
to see you. Thanks
thank
for
you very
joining
much
us. Thank you.
for joining us. We've been
Thanks
speaking
for
with
having
Imari
us.
Parish, Jeffries, President and CEO of Embrace Boston, the Reverend Jay Williams, lead pastor of the Union Combined Parish and co-chair of the MLK Jr. Memorial Breakfast Committee. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. Coming up after a quick break, just enough time in hour number 2 for our Two More Things segment. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
What happens when your child's school is falling apart, but the funding just isn't there to fix it? In Massachusetts, suburban schools get the most state support, so struggling urban districts are forced to find their own ways to improve their aging classrooms.
Nothing more important than school buildings. That's where our kids are. So it's very important that we have a coherent and equitable funding structure to support that work.
I'm Trajan Warren. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Rocky Ruggiero, making art and history come to life, offering travel programs throughout Italy and online learning opportunities on Italian art and culture. Learn more at rockyruggiero.com. And Newport Mansions, presenting a live performance of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol with Grammy-nominated ensemble Skylark and guest narrator Christine Baranski, December 19th at the Breakers. Tickets at newportmansions.org.
Welcome back to BPR, Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan. It's time for Two More Things. Marjorie, take it away.
Okay, I'm going to take it away. So we were talking about the president's cabinet meeting yesterday, where a lot of things did not go well. Biden made a lot of mistakes not recognizing people's problems with affordability, and that's become like the major issue now. And so the president yesterday, to me, did just what Joe Biden did, pretended that the affordability issue that people are feeling every day is somehow not real. Here he is calling the issue of affordability a con job created by Democrats.
You know, there's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. Eggs were 4 or 5 times higher than they had ever been. They said don't order eggs for Easter at the White House, and we ended up doing it, and we got the egg prices way down, lower than what they were before. But the word affordability is a con job by the Democrats.
You know, maybe if he didn't invite so many billionaires to his parties at the White House, the Great Gatsby parties, all these wonderful parties that he throws all the time while people are losing their SNAP benefits, he'd understand a little bit more about the reality of this affordability crisis. And I can't believe he said that. You'd think he would have learned that politically from Biden's mistakes, because he's pretty politically astute, but I guess not.
Okay, so I think, well, I agree with that. I think we have to be fairer than we ordinarily are to Trump, because there were some pretty major important moments yesterday in the cabinet meeting from some of the secretaries. We don't have that much time to share them with you. Here are some of the major moments that I think would matter to the American people. Here they are.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for allowing me to be at this table.
I am so blessed and honored to be part of this team, so thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I am truly grateful to be a member of your team here at this table.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. First of all, this is a very talented team, as you've seen, and as you know, because you picked every single one that's on. You deserve tremendous credit for doing that. It's an honor to be in this role.
Let me tell you something. If I had to do that, and I had to go home, I would break every mirror in my house. The sycophancy. Now, let me be honest here, though.
Okay.
I want to be clear. I don't want to be extreme. I'm not saying that it's always inappropriate to behave like that. I'm saying it's sometimes inappropriate. And in fact, last week when Marjorie had left earlier to do whatever it is she does, get her hair done or something, I had a meeting with the staff without Marjorie. And here's just some of the comments that came out from some of our colleagues during our brief staff meeting.
Hey Jim, it's Nicole. I just wanted to thank you so much for the 5-minute voicemail of the Mans that you left me, complete with your thoughtful suggestion that I deliver you a Cobb salad. It was just so lovely to hear your voice.
Hey Jim, it's Zoe. Thanks so much for all the times you call attention to the multiple burning fires we're trying to put out back here in the control room while we're on air. The listeners and I Thank you so much for that.
That's nice. Thank
Jim,
you.
it's Jamie, and I want to thank you for your tireless dedication to the show, including doing things like sending a 5:46 a.m. email on Thanksgiving morning demanding my work and attention. It really means a lot to me.
I'm so glad to hear that.
You're thinking about what I'm doing every hour of the day or night.
Now, by the
Wow.
way, I didn't ask for those, by the way.
I didn't know that was
really,
coming.
That was really lovely.
Yep.
I want to thank Nicole. I want to thank Jamie. I want
Yep.
to thank Zoe for recognizing. So what I'm basically trying to say, in some situations it is sycophantic and rather embarrassing. But in those cases, I think it was a legitimate appreciation of the work of what a real leader does. So
No,
thank
nothing
you to all
says
of them.
Happy Thanksgiving like a email from your boss at 5 o'clock on Thanksgiving
It wasn't
morning.
5, it was 5:46.
5:46
yeah.
a.m. on Thanksgiving morning.
Thank you to
right
all them,
then.
by the way.
All
Thank
right
you,
then.
yes.
Nice job. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to take a look at the ballot questions. There's a lot of them that voters will decide in the 2026 election. They're involving voter registration requirements, tax rate cuts, rent control. We're going to talk with Tufts University, Evan Horowitz, who knows all about this stuff. And we're also going to talk about how Trump's policies are devastating the Massachusetts economy, which used to be leading the nation. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Evan Horowitz is next.
GBH is your home for quality local news and conversations that matter to you. Listener support is essential to providing the critical resources needed to cover the issues of the day with accuracy and accountability. Pitch in online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering private cooking events for your next team building activity, family reunion, birthday party, or night out. You can learn more at cambridgeculinary.com. And Revision Energy, a solar company and a Mitsubishi Electric heating and air conditioning contractor, committed to helping customers lower their environmental impact, offering all-electric heat pump systems from Mitsubishi Electric. RevisionEnergy.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 3 of BPR, partially live from the Boston Public Library. We'll start the hour with Evan Horowitz from the Tufts Center for State Policy Analysis with a preview of the 2026 ballot initiatives Massachusetts voters could face, and they could have huge impacts on our lives, plus how many Massachusetts cities and towns are facing budget crises going into the new year and what they could do about it.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll end the day with a doozy. It was a bad look for the president, fighting to stay awake during a 2-hour cabinet meeting yesterday. Is this hypocritical from the man who spent years railing against Sleepy Joe? Yes, it is. But who hasn't, at one point or another, had to fight to stay awake during a particularly dull, endless, could have been an email work meeting? Can you relate? Call or text. How do you stay awake during these dull required meetings? That's next on the never dull third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A day after President Trump disparaged the nation of Somalia with words like stinks and garbage, Somali President, rather Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre says it's better not to respond. This is part of what President Trump told reporters at a cabinet meeting yesterday about Somali immigrants in the United States.
I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country.
In Somalia, long considered a key U.S. ally in the fight against the al-Shabaab terrorist group, officials are facing public pressure at home and abroad to call out Trump. The U.S. president acknowledges he has leveled similar remarks against other countries, but his rhetoric has repeatedly turned back to the Somali immigrant community, especially one of his most vocal critics in Congress, Representative Ilhan Omar. And now officials in Minneapolis and St. Paul, home to the largest Somali community in the U.S., are reacting with concern to reports of a planned immigration crackdown in their communities. New Orleans is the latest target of the administration's crackdown on illegal immigration. Mel Bridges with member station WWNO reports Customs and Border Patrol officers are now arriving in the city.
The Department of Homeland Security says it's sending federal agents to address, quote, criminal illegal aliens roaming free, and says local authorities are not cooperating with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office is under a federal consent decree which prohibits them from holding people suspected of being in the country illegally beyond their release date. The FBI and Louisiana State Police have rolled out a joint effort to prevent citizens from interfering with federal immigration officers. Other Democratic-led cities like Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Charlotte have also seen major immigration enforcement efforts. For NPR News, I'm Mel Bridges.
U.S.-Russia negotiations in Moscow aimed at ending the war in Ukraine wrapped up yesterday without significant progress. But, as NPR's Eleanor Beardsley tells us, the Ukrainian negotiating team is preparing to meet with Trump's envoy soon.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says his negotiators are in Brussels to brief the Europeans on the U.S.-Russia talks. Then they will prepare for their meeting with U.S. officials. Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the Europeans of trying to thwart President Trump's peace deal by changing the draft proposal to make it unacceptable for Russia. As the talks took place in Moscow, Zelensky addressed the Irish parliament, saying Europe must keep the pressure on Putin.
So that Russia does not believe it will be rewarded for this war with stolen Ukrainian land or 1,000 kidnapped Ukrainian children.
Analysts say the sides remain too far apart to conclude a peace deal. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Kyiv.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average now up 372 points, or more than 0.75%. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Thousands of landlords who rent to some of Boston's poorest households through the government's Section 8 voucher program will see rent payments temporarily cut this month due to funding delays in the aftermath of the recently ended government shutdown. Globe reports that the Boston Housing Authority, which administers the vouchers, sent a letter yesterday to some 6,000 Section 8 landlords saying it has yet to receive a significant chunk of funding from monthly payments from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And free pre-K schooling is coming to Taunton Public Schools in the 2026-2027 school year. Taunton Gazette reports that following a no-brainer vote by the Taunton School Committee at last month's meeting, Superintendent of Schools John Cabral says by making pre-K free, the district would get more money in state aid than the district is currently getting in tuition from parents and caregivers. And air travelers who haven't yet gotten their real IDs will be charged $45 fee beginning in February. So says an announcement on Monday from the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA. Up until now, passengers without a real ID have been allowed to clear security with additional screening and a warning. The Department of Homeland Security says 94% of passengers are already compliant and that the new fee is intended to encourage travelers to go out and get that new real ID. 34 degrees in Boston right now, mostly sunny sky. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are, well, at least half of us, I'm live here at the Boston Public Library. Jim is still back in the Red Room at his home. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back in Brighton tomorrow with live music from the Levies. They're really, really good. A member of the band is from Guster. He used to be with Guster. Or maybe he's still with Guster.
He is with Guster.
He's still with Guster. Okay. They're going to be in Studio 3. Then we're going to be back here at the Boston Public Library on Friday with the Black Hole Symphony for live music Friday. A couple of programming notes. The mayor will be with us December 16th from 1 to 2, and the governor will be with us December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, from 11 until noon. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie. We're joined now at the library, or Marjorie's joined at the library, by Evan Horowitz. Evan is the executive director of the Center for State Policy Analysis at Tufts University's Tisch College. He's out with a number of reports on a whole host of critically important issues: Medicaid, local funding, Trump and state funding, a whole bunch of things. Evan, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here.
Yeah,
Can I say, first, how much I loved that little bit you guys did on sycophancy? It was great. And like more and more people saying you guys are the greatest radio hosts that have ever been. So
That's right.
I keep hearing it.
No doubt. We are the greatest radio hosts of all time.
What is he
More and more people saying.
I mean, we never won any awards, though. Maybe because people don't like you, Jim. Is that why?
I'm working on it.
That could be it. I don't know.
Evan, thanks. You're a sweet
That's
soul.
very nice of you to say.
Okay.
Very sincere. So anyway, we got a lot of ballot questions. Ballot questions. Is it 10 or 11 of them, or how many now have reached that got enough signatures to get someplace?
It's between 10 and 12. There's some question about whether everyone who says they have the signatures really have the signatures, but it's a lot, low double digits.
So what are the big ones?
The biggest ones, plans to cut the income tax from 5% to 4%. Statewide rent control is a huge one. And opening up the legislature to public records requests. There are some really consequential ballot questions that could be heading our way.
Let's start with cutting the income tax. What is that going to mean, and does it have a chance of getting through? This is one of your areas, Jim. You're a big not cut the income tax guy. Are you not?
Well, normal people are actually against cutting the income tax.
Oh, really?
But why don't we let Evan describe what the proposal is?
And see if I'm a normal person.
Yeah.
Find out.
Yeah, so this would have massive implications for the state budget, right? The income tax is the single biggest source of revenue for our budget. We get between $20 and $25 billion a year from the income tax, and this would siphon away $4 to $5 billion of that. So you're talking about huge cuts all across the budget. Now, the other side of it is people would be paying less money to the state in income taxes. So, voters will have to face this trade-off. Do they think they pay too much? Do they think the state should make do with less? Well, let's be clear, it's a lot less.
Okay, here's the thing. I mean, why I always wonder about the state one, because when you look at your taxes every year, the big chunk of your money is not going to the Massachusetts, it's going to the feds for the most part. And then you look at the cities and towns that are, as you pointed out some of these stories, bleeding in money. They're talking about cutting schools and all that kind of stuff. So this could be a cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of thing for taxpayers if it passes.
Taxpayers and voters need to recognize there's no free lunch here.
Yeah.
Yes, this will mean less money for schools. Yes, this will mean less money for the priorities that we care about, because there's no way to eliminate $4 or $5 billion from the budget and not touch priorities. It's too much money. It's too big a part of the budget. So yes, childcare, the things we care about that the state's doing, healthcare, that stuff is going to be affected by a change of this.
So who thinks I want to know who thinks it's a good idea.
Let's not even give him publicity. Can we? I don't want to do that.
Jim says we can't talk about it.
Can we stay on this just for a second, kind of thing? By the way, Marjorie, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Last time there was a huge tax cut proposal on the ballot. I can't remember who led the opposition successfully.
Oh my God! Every time you ask me a question, it's always to talk about some heroic thing that
happened in 1823.
1823. That is correct. It was a long time ago.
It was 1990. It was me. Thank you very much.
That's why we're talking off air. When he thinks Evan thinks rent control is going to get crushed, but I'm not so sure.
Well, Marjorie, can we stay on one topic?
We'll stay on one topic at a time. Go ahead.
Okay, on the income tax.
God.
There are two bleed outs from the income tax proposal, because it is so threatening a thing, and people's national inclination is to cut taxes until they hear. Number one, the pro-rent control forces, which we're going to talk about in a minute, were buoyed by the fact that the mass teachers, for example, that generally spend more money on ballot questions than anybody else, are on their side. But if there's a proposal to cut the income tax by $5 billion a year, the MTA's got to decide where to spend its money. That's number one. Number two, the impact of this, which I haven't read about yet, this is going to put the Republicans running against Healy in a really tough position, because generally Republicans on the state level here are tax cutters, and they're going to have to decide whether they endorse a ballot question on the same ballot that they are, that would do this kind of damage to the state ballot. Would you not agree with that, Evan?
No, I think that's right. I think they'll end up endorsing it. But the other possibility for this ballot question, and you know, Jim, from your many centuries working on ballot questions.
Centuries, yes.
How these things work. But sometimes at this stage, they are bargaining chips. You are here to advance an initiative that you think scares legislators enough that they will give you some other thing you want.
Point.
And that is still a possibility for this one. It may not be that the supporters really want a 4% income tax. They they may want something else, paring back some other tax, and they think this is the way to get it.
Okay, so rent control, Marjorie mentioned. We all know that there was a home rule petition from the city of Boston, endorsed by 11 of the 13 city councilors, by the mayor. 75% of the people in the city in a poll said they supported it, went to the legislature. Like all good ideas that go to Beacon Hill, it died. Now there's a ballot proposal that's much more restrictive in terms of rent increases. And we asked Mayor Wu in November whether she was supporting that question. Here's her response.
Yes, we need a new system. I haven't yet had a chance after the city election to sit down with the advocacy community and really sort through. So I haven't taken a public position yet on this. Again, my belief is that housing costs are the biggest liability for the future of our city and state economy.
Even if it's imperfect by your standards, if it's the only game in town, can you imagine a situation where you'd say people should vote no?
I don't know. I would probably stay out more than anything else.
I was sort of shocked by that. What's your sense of the question?
But I think that tells you how different this particular ballot question is from the other rent control proposals that we've seen around the state. It is much sharper. It is much more dramatic. It is much more comprehensive. It is really incomparable with anything else that we have talked about. In fact, it's incomparable with anything else happening around the country. There is no rent control system anywhere in the United States that looks anything like this ballot initiative, in the sense that it covers virtually all rental properties around the state. 70% roughly 70% we think of rental properties will be covered. And it caps rental increases at inflation. There are small places that do one or the other, but nobody does both of these on a statewide system. It would have massive implications, way beyond anything we've talked about in other rent control proposals.
There are two exceptions. 4 units or fewer does not cover, and the first 10 years of new construction.
Both of those accounted for in my 70% number. Yes. And even that 10%, like if you think of rent control in places where it's famous, San Francisco or New York, it's not 10 years that a building's exempt. It's all buildings that were built after a certain date. So like, in New York, if you're building a building now, it's not going to be subject to rent control in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because there's no way to build a building now that was built in 1977, right? It's built now. This wouldn't do that. Any building you build will be subject to rent control in a period of 10 years. It's really a very restrictive law. And I think the more people know about it, that's why I was saying before that I don't know what its chances are, but I think they're weaker than people think right now.
Okay, but since we have been working, Jim and I, on these initiatives for centuries, particularly Jim, for centuries.
How have you been working on them?
Well, I remember writing about them back in 1990.
Yeah, you trashed
when
me.
This happened. I did trash Jim, but it's not about you at the moment, Jim. It's about the fact that Brookline, Cambridge, and Boston, which had rent control, the people there wanted it to keep it. I live in Brookline. I know how dramatically Brookline changed when they got rid of the rent control that was there. It changed the town completely. Plus, it wasn't so bad, the rent then, compared to what it is now. And all we hear about is affordability. Can't afford the rent, can't afford the rent, can't afford the rent, can't afford anything. And that's why I'm not sure.
And I think this is the argument you're going to hear. There is a housing affordability crisis. That is true. We need to do something. That is true. This is something. How could we not do it? I just think that's a very weak form of argument. It's true, this is something, it just happens to be not the right something. It's a pretty bad something.
Also, take a similar line that you mentioned a minute ago, that often ballot campaigns, and a lot of people have done that, including me, are leveraged to get something from the legislature and then you drop the campaign. This is sort of flip on the same thing. One of the reasons I think this question is headed towards the ballot is because the legislature has been so cavalier in ignoring home rule petitions like Boston's, as I said, overwhelmingly supported by elected leaders and constituents, and it didn't even get a hearing. And it seems to me, had they shown some respect to Boston and say, here, we're going to give you what you want, even though we're not crazy about it, your leaders and your constituents want it, then maybe it would have muted the desire to proceed with a statewide question that you and others feel is a bit extreme, no?
I mean, I think that's possible. You could imagine it building momentum, too. I mean, in some ways, I think there's a very contingent choice here, which was that the people behind this particular ballot question could have chosen to give each city and town the option to opt into it. They made a choice not to do that. I don't think that was conditioned by like historical events in a way that they had to go this route. They decided to go this route. I think that may be its undoing. It is a major problem here. I'm surprised they didn't. I think it's a much more winnable ballot question if you say, this becomes an option for any city or town that wants it.
Who's behind it?
It's a relatively small group on the housing affordability side, but they've gotten more partners over time. But you've seen the kind of split even among progressives. So you heard Mayor Wu, but she's not the only one who's sort of uncertain and dancing a little bit about whether they're going to support it.
You know, I always thought it was really unfair for realtors, for state legislators, and there's a lot of them who have a lot of real estate, not necessarily in Boston, but I mean, some of them have millions of dollars worth of real estate. It seems to me they shouldn't be able to vote on something that's going to so impact their bottom line. It seems like a real conflict of interest. What do you think?
Well, I mean, many people in Massachusetts now have millions of dollars in real estate because the median home price is close to $1 million.
Well, that's a good point.
60% of people are homeowners. So like the number of people with millions of dollars in real estate is big.
Okay.
And actually, no, this is relevant.
Then we
because
say
rent
15 million. You go, 15 million worth of rental property. Rental property.
So, I mean, it's true people carry their own baggage into the legislature.
Yeah.
I think you get to vote anyway. But I do think this is relevant in the sense that rent control is going to hit homeowners. Like, it does drive down not just rental properties, but also home values. Is like a well-studied thing. So you are asking homeowners to say, yes, I believe in affordability at the expense of the value of my own home. And I think that'll come out as like one of the challenges of navigating the sort of ballot.
And why does it hurt the value of your own home?
Because one of the things you can do with your home is rent it out.
Okay.
And that's built into the value. And you can't do that in a world where you can rent it, where there's rent control. Also, if there are lots of rental buildings around you.
Wait a second. If you just have one unit like I do, you can.
Well, if you're not living there, like let's say you want to move out of your house.
Wait, this question wouldn't allow somebody who has one rental unit in the house in which they live?
You have to live in. You have to live in the unit, right?
Oh, you do? Oh, I wasn't aware of that. In the months ahead, we're going to have Evan back a lot, so we see when the number of questions that actually qualify for the ballot, they get the signatures, they get the second round of signatures. So we'll continue these discussions as time goes forward.
Any more of them we want to mention?
Well, you wanted to talk a lot about the Trump impact.
Well,
on
I
the
did. You
state
wrote
budget.
a really depressing story, I hate to say, for the Globe about how Trump is walloping the Massachusetts economy. So tell us what you said. This is in the Globe.
So, I mean, this may not surprise people, or may surprise people. Trump, not great for the economy. True nationwide, true here in Massachusetts. Now, we have built over time an economy that is relatively resilient.
Yeah.
Usually when the rest of the country is kind of falling into recession, we're stabilizing things here. And there are a couple of reasons, but the big reason is we have stable industries. Higher education and healthcare. Those are like the two big ones. And guess which industries the Trump administration has been going after, among others? Well, universities in a big way here, so they're hurting. And health research, right, has been really hit. That really hurts hospitals. And also now we have additional changes to Medicaid, health insurance. So the industries that have stabilized the state in the past are now accelerating our decline. And I think at this point we are in a small recession, right, in New England. And we've sort of leading the country that way into recession. And, that's really unusual. It's quite unusual.
Well,
but that's the situation we're in.
Unemployment and job openings, that you have dismal perspective on that, too.
Yeah, unfortunately I do. But we have seen unemployment rising in this state faster than it's been rising around the country. Again, that never happens.
Yeah.
We've been under the national unemployment rate like 90% of the time over the last 30 years, and now we're above it. And that's going to keep happening, and hiring's been low. There's no reason to expect that to turn around. No, I think we are a picture of where the rest of the nation is headed. We're just a few months ahead. The one thing that is really stabilizing the state budget, keeping us from a much deeper recession, is the stock market, asset prices. If that holds up, and, I don't know, who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, it might. If it holds up, we can probably muddle through, and if it doesn't, things get a lot worse.
And one other thing, some people that think they don't like Harvard because they think they're a bunch of snobs or whatever it is, the impact of Harvard is not just about the bratty little undergraduates that you may not like, it's the jobs.
Yeah. Oh no, they are a huge employer.
Yeah.
Right? They are a backbone of a whole section of Cambridge, right? That's where the money is. That's people who staff the university, people who are, adjacent to the university, rely on the money that comes through the university coffers and out into the community. And as they're paring back, which they are doing, so you have a tightening of belts all around
So
Cambridge.
this could continue until Trump is out of office?
Well, it's going to continue until something broader happens in the economy, and the question is, what is that thing going to be? But the key point about Trump moving forward is, when we get to that point, is he going to help us, right? Or is he only going to provide government aid and assistance to states that support him, which he's inclined to do? So yes, let's say things do get worse, as I expect that they will, but obviously who knows. Usually the feds step in. They say, you know what, now it's time for some expanded unemployment insurance. It's time for some direct aid, things like that. You could easily imagine the Trump administration saying, we're going to selectively provide that kind of assistance
so
in a way that
Alabama
no presidential administration has done ever.
Okay. That's good.
It's great. Fantastic.
So Evan Horowitz, can I switch gears,
Yes,
Marjorie?
yes.
I spoke at the Mass Association of School Committee and many superintendents meeting a couple of Fridays ago, and the report you did for the Mass Municipal Association about the precarious state of local finance was at least a major topic of conversation during my panel. Could you give sort of like an English language version of the mess that cities and towns find themselves in, and how much or how little the state is helping?
So the short version is this. We have a rule in Massachusetts that says if you're a city and town, you can basically increase your taxes 2.5% a year. There are exceptions, but let's stick with that, about 2.5% a year. So when inflation is like 2%, that's not great, but it's okay. You can keep up with costs, you can continue to pay police and provide road repair. When inflation is 3%, 5%, 8%, it's a disaster. You have to cut salaries in real terms every year, and that's what inflation has been like. So towns are totally underwater as a result of this. Now, we have there are some ways around this. One of them is that the state is supposed to provide direct aid in addition to this. So we limit how much you can raise in taxes, but we'll give you education aid, lots of that, and we'll give you this unrestricted aid that you can use. But that's been going down by double-digit percentages over the last few decades. So towns are not getting the state aid, they don't have the flexibility to raise money, and inflation is beating them down. So they're in a disastrous situation.
So what the solution, Marjorie and I were talking about this morning, and a lot of people think you shouldn't tie the hands of cities and towns. They should be able to raise money on their own any way they want. The problem is, even if they had that right in this state, which they don't, except around a limited way around the property tax, as you said, because of Prop 2.5, a lot of cities and towns don't have the tax base, either in terms of income or property, to do that. So by definition, if the state doesn't step in, it leaves a lot of our communities at huge risk, even if they had more taxing power.
Yeah,
right?
so particularly, and this is one thing we tried to do in the report, is like separate types of communities. Rural communities are really pressing their ability to raise taxes. So even if you said to them, like, forget 2.5, go raise as much as you may, they do not have the income. Gateway cities, they don't have the ability to do that. Now, suburbs, sure. If you limited Prop 2.5 and said raise more money, most of them would be all right. They could raise more money. It would be a fight. But yes, on the rural communities, the gateway cities, they have very little option to raise local money, and they need, it's not even like more aid, just the historical level of unrestricted aid that they've gotten over time would be a massive boon.
So I'm sorry, one last thing about that, if I may. Mayor Wu, much to my surprise, let me play it actually. Here's Mayor Wu in October. We asked her about Prop 2.5.
Yes, we need a new system.
Okay.
I would be happy if that came through a repeal pathway. I'd be happy if it came through a different pathway. Certainly we need some structure in place, but it is putting immense pressure, and cities already have a very, very tight belt cinched around us.
Okay, so why shouldn't Prop 2.5 be repealed? And if local leaders raise taxes too precipitously, then you vote them out and pick people who don't. Why shouldn't that happen?
I actually think that's a totally reasonable thing to do, to bring tax policy back into politics and make it a political thing. And it's interesting to come back to Boston here, because Boston's got a whole bunch of tax-related problems that are sort of coming to the fore right now. And one of the reasons it's coming to the fore is that they've forgotten that tax policy is a political choice. No one forces the city of Boston to raise the maximum. So we were saying, like, lots of cities and towns are restricted. They can only raise about 2.5% more money per year. Boston's not like that. They have lots of new buildings. There are loopholes. They increase their revenues by 5-6% every year. So they're not really constrained that way. And yet every year they say, okay, let's take the maximum that Proposition 2.5 allows, the maximum. And then they turn around and say, oh no, we decided to take the maximum, and it means that residential property tax rates are going to go up 13%. How terrible. Don't take the maximum. You have a choice. This is a political choice. No one is forcing you to do this. And I think in some ways, like, Proposition 2.5 has erased this recollection that tax rates are a choice, that they should be a matter of local politics, that they should be a debate. They are not formulaic.
Well, I thought one of the big problems for Boston was the pandemic and nobody being in the downtown buildings, which used to supply. They're not worth what they were, and they're getting abatements. They don't want to pay the property taxes.
That's 100% it. So
yeah.
It's much harder for them to raise money from office buildings. And you have a couple of options there. You can compensate by raising residential taxes, which is what they're doing, which is fine. But then you can't complain about it, because your other option is, well, raise less in taxes and keep the residential rates where they are. You can also do that.
You need that. But I mean, you're leaving half the equation out. The reason they do it is because their leaders believe they need that level of funding.
Oh, that's fine.
For things
like
that
I said,
matter.
That's totally fine. You just have to. It should be part of the political discussion, right? Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying you just have to be honest about it. The reason we're raising it is because we believe we want this money for core city services that we believe in, that you believe in, that are central to our community. Not, we're forced. We've been backed into a corner and we have to raise your. No, that's not what's happening. You are making a choice about the level of services and taxes that you think are appropriate. That should be a political discussion.
Okay, there's another political question. We're running out of time here almost.
Okay.
But I often wonder, you hear all the time about the state giving less and less money, for example, to UMass or UMass schools, the cities and towns in general. The legislators that are up on Beacon Hill, they all come from either a city or a town. So their city, their town is impacted by the state taking away all this money. I don't understand why it's so hard to get the legislature to be a little bit more generous toward the cities and towns that every single one of these people comes from.
Okay, so I think there is a lot of misunderstanding among legislators about how generous they are. There's a lot of puffery in how they're treated, and they think that they're very generous. And I think one of the things that really shocked legislators about the report we wrote was we showed how state aid to cities and towns in Massachusetts compared to other states. And I think they thought of themselves as being extremely generous and at the top of the heap. We are below average.
Yeah.
Well below average in terms of the amount of state aid. And I think this was shocking to people. So I think there is a lack of recognition among legislators that this is even a problem worthy of solving, that it exists as a challenge.
That's a great answer.
I don't think that's the right answer. There's not just, well, maybe it's half right.
I think it's
I'll take half right from Jim.
There's puffery, Jim. It's puffery.
No, there's not just a lack of recognition. That's where you're half right. It's a lack of independence and courage. None of them have the courage to stand up to the leaders of the House and the Senate. They make those two individuals decide what the policy of the building is, and the other 198, not all of them, most of the 198, act in sheep-like fashion. Isn't that a fair statement?
Can I respond to your saying that I'm half right by saying you're half right?
Okay, yes, you may.
I think that's much more true of the House than the Senate. I mean, I think I would accept that characterization of the House and not the Senate.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Evan, it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too.
Keep
Evan.
writing. Your stuff is great.
Thank you very, very much. I hope you can come back in. It's about question stuff. Gets more, what gets close to us. Evan Horowitz is Executive Director of the Center for State Policy Analysis at Tufts University's Tisch College. The website, cspa.tufts.edu. That's cspa.tufts.edu. Thank you for your great writing, and thank you for being here, Evan.
Thanks,
Coming
Evan.
up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on a certain someone who appeared to fall asleep at an important meeting yesterday, but we're really not going to talk that much about that certain someone. We're going to talk about you. How many times have you fallen asleep or almost fallen asleep at one of those endless, should have been an email or shouldn't have been called at all, meeting at your office, whether it's in person or on Zoom? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Rolfe. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as the CDC reconsiders its stance on childhood vaccinations, Governor Healy and state health leaders are stressing the importance of vaccines for kids. And with the MCAS out, Governor Healy is proposing a new framework of educational standards students must meet to graduate from high school. We'll look at how it may or may not set students up for success and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Classic Harbor Line, offering classic yacht cruises throughout the holiday season in Boston and New York City, including Coco and Carol's, live jazz, and holiday brunch cruises. More at classicharborline.com. And Bonsai Bar, hosting pop-up beginner bonsai workshops at breweries across New England. Hands-on classes provide guidance in the basics of bonsai design and care in a group setting. More at bonsaibar.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. She's at the library. I'm home. I'm coming back to work tomorrow. We'll be in Brighton tomorrow. We're having music, actually live music from Brighton, called by the Levies in Studio 3. And it's a combination band from one player from Guster, one from a group called the Zambonis. And they do songs, believe it or not, around Hanukkah that are fabulous music, and they're great, so check it out. Back to the library on Friday with music. Mayor joins us on December 16th, Governor December 23rd. We're starting this segment with a developing story. A 79-year-old man appeared to fall asleep during an important 2-hour-long meeting yesterday. The New York Times reported that Trump was dozing during a cabinet meeting. The White House spokesperson, Karoline Leavitt, responded to reporters' questions about it, saying Trump was, quote, listening attentively and running the entire meeting, while asleep, by the way. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. A small part of our discussion is, do you too possess the capability of running meetings through closed eyelids? You ever fallen asleep in a meeting? If you want to tell those stories, that's fine. But it's really an entry point to something else. It's not surprising he fell asleep, because the meeting was 2 hours and 18 minutes long. Longer than any movie or play I'd be willing to sit through. So we want to know, what is your criteria for the perfect meeting? Time limits, caps on who gets to speak, or do you prefer the I'll just send an email instead of holding meetings? What's your meeting mojo? What's the worst and the best of meetings in your work and personal life? 877-301-8970. How do you feel about meetings, Marjorie?
I agree with Fortune magazine. They have a great piece saying that 3 out of 4 meetings are useless. 72% of the time you get absolutely nothing done. A small group of speakers, and this is so true, over and over again monopolize the whole thing. There are 2 or 3 people that never shut up at every meeting you go to. Nobody ever makes any decisions. No one knows what's expected of them. Many people, nearly 4 in 5 Americans, say they struggle to get their work done because of how many meetings they're expected to attend each week. So I am very grateful that we don't have to go to many meetings. We have a brief meeting in the morning to decide what we're going to talk about, and that's very useful. That's what we're going to do. But, I mean, just sit through meetings. We're over-meetinged in America, no question about it, Jim.
Well, I totally agree. And meetings are generally for people who have nothing to do. You go to, I mean, that's true. You go to a meeting, you make sure you have an opportunity to talk, to impress the boss. But if you actually had something to do, you wouldn't be sitting in that meeting for all that time. I don't know if it's from the Fortune magazine piece, but something we read this morning said the average this can't be true. The average worker spends 18 hours a week in 17.7 meetings per week. Whatever the number is, it's obscene. The best meeting to me is no meeting. And I've told this story before, but you should be as proud of this as I was. There was a wonderful story written about Marjorie and me in the show in Boston Magazine 6 or 7 years ago. And the author of the piece interviewed one of our good friends and colleagues, Azita Garamani, who was one of the 2 people who ran my television show years ago. And sadly, they did not include her quote in the piece, but she told me what it was afterwards. The author said, "What do you like most about working with Jim Browdy?" And she sat for a long minute, and she said, "His meetings are really short." And that, I wear that like a badge of honor.
No, that's true. We have very fast meetings in the morning, get something done. But I think people it's performance. I think a lot of them are about performance.
Right.
And you probably notice at your own office, the same people every time feel like they have to say something, and then a lot of people say nothing, and it just seems to me like it's a total waste of time. By the way, you know what's really interesting in this same Fortune story? They say that Zoom meetings fail to spark brain activity like in-person connection does. So apparently Zoom meetings are not as effective as we think they are.
Because most of the people in Zoom meetings aren't wearing pants. I mean, it's the whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me just say this. I feel like I'm a student of this issue. I think there's an inverse proportion between how much work you're actually doing and how much you speak at a meeting. Don't you find that to be the case? The people who are doing nothing are the ones that try to fill the most time to pretend that they're actually active. And those who are actually working outside of the meeting are generally the most silent.
I think that's a very good point. Let's start with Peter, who is on the highway. Thanks for calling, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
in the 1980s, I was in law school, and I would drink a cup of coffee before going to class, and then I'd find myself falling asleep in class with another cup of coffee. So I got myself a Mont Blanc auto pen, and that cured all of my problems, and I took wonderful notes, and I didn't have to pay much attention. But seriously, Red Bull is my go-to.
Red Bull what?
Red Bull is his go-to.
Red Bull is my
Red Bull is your go-to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But well, I think
That
a lot
works
of
better than anything.
I think a lot of people fall asleep at meetings, or they fall asleep, sitting around on their desk. But what do you think about meetings? Have meetings been useful in your career, Peter?
Yes, and the meetings tended to be more one-on-one or one-on 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And they're much easier to stay awake. and I have to say, Zoom meetings with no pants is a wonderful thing.
That is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Thank you
it is
very
a
much.
wonderful thing. Listeners are asking if you can
Thank you,
stand
Peter.
up, Jim, to prove that you're actually
I'm
not one of
fully-
the. Oh, that you got pants on. You got pants on
I'm
there.
fully dressed. Not
Okay.
always, but I am in this particular instance.
Another Peter says, when I worked in government and I could see a meeting was going nowhere, I would look at my watch and now, sorry, but I have a conference call now, and leave. That's a good excuse. I got something else going on. Jessica in Cambridge says, I had a calculus class at 8 a.m. 4 days a week. It got so bad that one day I woke up with my head on the desk and everybody had left. I flunked.
That's a pretty
I
good
remember
story.
when I was a kid in high school, I took
That's
this
great.
Asian history class with teacher George Kelly, his name was.
Wow,
And every morning, the kid that
remember.
was behind me, his name was Joey, and he sat right behind me. And every day, about 10 minutes into the class, I'd hear his head bang against the desk.
When it plunked down?
I think he may have, yeah. But anyway, Mr. Kelly would come by, pick him up by the back of the neck, and just throw him out in the hallway. Yeah, he did. That was the end of
That's
Joey.
horrible.
Yeah, it happened almost every day. It was wild. I think
By
he
the way,
had
are
a busy night the night before.
Are you driven as nuts by pointless, endless meetings as I am? We haven't discussed it much. I mean,
Well, I view them, since I've never run them myself, I just have to sit there and listen. I view them as kind of like a waste of time that I'm required to sit through, and so I sit through them. I mean, I think that's generally, you're not, you can, like they were at the president's meeting yesterday, you can doodle, you can draw things, you can make to-do lists, you can do this, that, or the other thing. Because I've never run a meeting. I'm sure Jim has run many meetings, but I have not run any. So
I can't believe you haven't told this story. The person just
story?
called a minute ago and said when the meeting's going too long,
Yeah.
they look at their watch and say they have a conference
That's
call.
right.
Marjorie has told the story about 1,000 times when we were at our prior radio station.
Oh God, yeah.
And John the Claw Parker.
John the Claw Parker, the same one
Marjorie,
that's with
I,
us now.
And our producer, Matt Shearer, who's
Right.
now very famous. He's at WBZ.
He's very talented.
Or John, who was
Yeah.
with us, another producer who, before Matt, I guess, when we would sit in a meeting after every single show with our program manager,
Yeah.
and when the meeting ran long, what would I do?
You would just leave.
I would
You
leave.
just leave and leave me and John, or me and whoever it was with it. Yeah, the rest of it. But what's weird about that, our boss would sit there motionless with her
hands
hands
over
on
the
the
thing.
computer.
She was great, by the way.
We were waiting for her to say something, and
Yeah.
we'd wait and we'd wait. So I don't know what was going on there. The whole situation was
What
very
did she
weird.
say when I would just stand up and leave? What did she ever say? Anything?
No, she didn't say anything. She just kind of.
John just said nothing too.
Yeah,
so there you
one
go.
down, 2 to go, or something. I don't know. Mike from Wilmington. What do you think, Mike?
Hello there, Mike.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I work for a large engineering firm, and yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so I work for a large engineering. We had a large engineering firm, and we had meetings all the time. And we also had a suggestion box, and one of the suggestions was that we have fewer meetings. So what do we do? But we scheduled a meeting to see if we could reduce the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, what we do to see if we're successful was we scheduled a meeting to see if we had.
That's not true. Is that true?
And we didn't accomplish it because we ended up having more.
Oh God.
Well, I hope that story is at least half
Yeah.
true. That's a good one.
That is
Thank you,
a
Mike.
great one, Mike. Well, this I keep quoting it because it's a really good story that packs a lot of information. This Fortune magazine suggests that you cut meetings from 30 to 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
And then you circulate an agenda. And at 15 minutes, if you get through it or not, you're done. You're out of there. I think that's a good suggestion. Rebecca in Boston, what do you think?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, let me get.
Oh,
we lost Rebecca for a second. Here's a good.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're
I'm
there.
here.
Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had to get. So the problem is not the meeting. The problem is from the planner. Planner of the meeting send out an agenda with timing on the agenda, and people who are responsible for items. If there are any materials, they need to be sent out ahead of time. And the meeting is only for the action. It's not for reading the materials.
You know, we have to let you go only because you have a horrible connection. Rebecca was exactly right. It's all about the planner of the meeting. It is totally true. He or she or they should set the parameters. The material has to go out in advance. You have to read it. They have to set time limits for all the discussions. And everybody does not, well, Margie's laughing. So what are you laughing about?
No, here's a good one. One company I work for required everybody to stand during meetings, so that solved the falling asleep issue. That's a lot of the reason why we stand on the radio, because you get less tired when you stand up than when you sit down. And
true.
Here's another texter who says, this is so true. I can't stand when a long, useless meeting that's been droning on clearly is coming to an end, and that one person who doesn't want to go back to work asks one more question.
Yeah. Well,
it's
or wants to
always
impress
the same person.
I was just going to say, it is exactly the same person. And also, it's not only that they don't want to go back to work, a lot of it is impressing the boss or impressing the supervisor.
That's right.
You got to show how smart you are. And maybe your work can impress the supervisor rather than pretending you're doing something.
Okay, Craig from Dover, New Hampshire says, meetings can certainly be useless, but Jim, you've been raging about osmosis mentorship.
Mentorship, I have.
So I found that a lot of knowledge can be gained during a meeting. How about that?
I'm not against having meetings at all. I'm suggesting they be tight, they be focused, they be action-oriented, and during that time, you can have all the osmosis you want. How
okay,
about that?
Margaret Newton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Margaret.
Hi, I'm happy to say I belong to an organization that has perfect meetings. It's Dignity Alliance Massachusetts. We meet only once every 2 weeks. It's an hour, and it's a real hour. And we have an agenda that is set by one of our co-leaders named Paul Lanzikos. And it's a coalition of experts about health care. We're very focused. We're an advocacy group that advocates to the legislature for long-term care and getting people out of nursing homes. And only the experts speak, and they speak briefly. Wow. They want our attention, but they only get it if they give us an update.
So how did you come to this perfection meeting? Was there somebody that was like the meeting guru who arrived at this way to carry these things on, or what happened, Margaret?
I was writing a book called American Eldercide about the deaths in the nursing homes in across the United States, and in 1920, all those deaths. And I found them by accident about 2.5 years into my research. And I started attending these meetings. And I've had pretty good meetings all my life. Some of them I ran myself. Efficient, short, brief speeches. But these people were beyond compare.
Okay. Well, Margaret, thank you very much for the call. Sanford for Haven is objecting.
Margaret, are you gone, Margaret?
No, she's still there. Are you still there, Margaret?
All the time.
Oh, I have one quick question for you. What happens when the 60-minute mark is met and there's still business to be taken care of? What happens?
Well, sometimes we go over a few minutes, but nobody begrudges the time.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
It's going to be.
Yeah,
Margaret, we lost you again.
That's the other thing, though. If it's over, it's supposed to be over at 4 o'clock. I want it to be over at 4 o'clock.
Well, can I talk about the other end of the meeting? I forgot. I can't believe we haven't mentioned this. Both you and I admire him for this. Mm-hmm. George W. Bush was a very punctual kind of person. If he called a cabinet meeting at 9 o'clock and at 9:01 the Secretary of State showed up, what would happen, Margaret?
Be locked out.
He'd be locked out. That is exactly true.
And that's very unusual. Remember Bill Clinton? He was like 2 hours late for everything.
That's great.
Sanford Verhaven says the only thing worse than going to a meeting is listening to a 30-minute segment on meetings. That's an excellent point, Sam. We'll blame Jim for this one.
That's pretty good, Sam.
Okay, let's go to Jason in Cambridge. Hi, Jason.
Hello, Jason.
Hi. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm hearing an echo. Are you?
Yeah, it's a problem.
We don't hear the echo.
Yeah,
We're sorry
you sound good, though.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
Okay. So during the program, I added 2 plus 2, and realized that if Trump could refrain from staying up until 3 a.m. composing rage text, he would be able to stay awake during the daytime and know what the hell is happening in the world.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the latter, but he could stay awake. That is true.
He's
That
also
is
sitting
true.
down. He's always sitting down at the Resolute desk, or he's sitting down at those cabinet meetings. You should try what we do, Jim. Maybe you could send him a text and suggest that he stand.
But did you, where the
during
caller
those
just
meetings.
said, did you read that he apparently sent out more than 100
Yeah.
rage posts on Truth Social
I
the
know.
other night?
Yeah. Well, that's
Jim, there are some things I don't want to know. But I also texted that in an English class, it was so bad I'd prop my head up, come to, and I'd drool down my whole forearm.
That's beautiful.
And then one day, I fell out of the chair, but I nailed the landing.
Love it. That's a beautiful
And it
story.
was-
What's that?
It's all true.
Thanks for sharing it with us. Alex in Palmer says, I've been an engineer for 15 years, had literally hundreds of meetings. I still haven't been to one that wouldn't have been better off as an email chain.
I mean, that's a great point, too. And Jesse, watching on YouTube, says, please stop the repetition at meetings. Say your point once. That's another
also
thing.
beautiful.
Yeah, why we feel compelled to say the same thing over and over
There's
again.
a reason I say it all the time. It's about impressing. You know what it's like, impressing the boss? You know what that's like? It's like when blast emails are sent out at workplaces.
Yeah.
90% of the responses are not about the content. What are 90% of the responses about?
Well, just to make sure that people know that you responded.
Right, impressing the boss.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Trump's cabinet. That's what a lot of these kinds of things are. Well, that's an extreme version. Thank you, Mr.
That's why
President,
people don't like
for everything.
Facebook. Lots of people don't like Facebook, because you got like all these people on that you haven't seen for 20 years or 40 years since you were in high school or college, and you have to feel like you have to wish them a happy birthday.
Read the top anonymous text. It's pretty good.
When our boss had meetings, we would get a numbers pool going for how many times he would use the phrase "moving forward." Winners got a free lunch.
That's pretty good.
That would have been good for Bill Belichick. We always would say, on to Cleveland, on to Cleveland,
Cincinnati,
on to
that's
on
right.
to Cincinnati,
Wherever
wherever
it
he
was,
was
yeah.
going. Daniel on the highway. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello there.
Hi.
Yes. Actually, 30-so years ago, I worked at Tax Equity Alliance of Massachusetts, where you was the director. And I learned everything I needed to know about meetings there.
Which I'm afraid to ask.
Jim would show up after the meeting. He would just talk about how he can't find a decent tongue sandwich in Boston, and we would just carry on working.
Hey, Dan, did you really work at Team?
Actually, I was just an intern there. So my first office job ever, and we had some rather boring meetings there, which you never attended.
Thank you.
And I took it from that. I want to be Jim when I grow up, where I don't have to attend meetings.
Hey, Dan, it's really good to hear from you. That is a pretty great call. Thanks, Daniel, for sharing a little bit of history.
TJ says, I love long-winded meetings. Then next week when everything is late, my excuse is the meetings took too long. And then Ted from Worcester says, in New Jersey suburb years ago, some well-meaning people thought their families were too busy, so they decided a plan for a do-nothing day when nothing would be scheduled community-wide. But it took their committee 5 months of meetings to plan the day. That's a good one. Can you just see that happening?
Do you not feel when you're in a meeting that goes longer than it needs to, which is almost every meeting,
Mhm.
do you not feel your blood pressure rising in your body as
No,
you sit
I
in there?
don't. I view it as an opportunity to just
No, you
sit
don't.
there like a potted plant.
No, you don't.
I do. Yeah,
You're an action-oriented kind of person. You
I am?
are.
Okay.
Well, actually, you're not. No, I forgot. No.
No, you're really. I can see your blood pressure going through the roof, but it's just like you got to go to the meeting, you got to sit there, you got to do it, but you don't have to really do anything for that time the meeting is there. You don't
But you
have to.
would be doing something where you're
Well,
not
you would
sitting
be,
in a meeting
you would be
doing nothing.
something, but I think for a lot of people, it gives them an excuse. There's the boss. The boss knows they're at the meeting. The boss knows they can't get anything done during the meeting. The problem is if you really have a lot to do, and then you have to keep going to these
Exactly.
meetings, then you can't get anything done. You have to
So-
work like 10 hours a day.
Here's a clip.
Go ahead. You can talk.
Here's a clip from The Office where Pam shares how she gets out of a boring meeting.
Oh, Is it coming?
I can usually come up with one good comment during a meeting, but
No,
by
that's
the
the
end
wrong
it's
button.
buried under a pile of
good.
gaffes and bad puns.
Showmanship, George. When you hit that high note, say goodnight and walk off.
Oh, yeah, that was from Seinfeld. That was the wrong clip.
Okay.
But we do have a clip. I think we do have the clip, you guys, from The Office when Pam is talking about what she does to get out of a meeting. It is called Labor from The Office. Here's Pam.
Okay.
We don't have it.
877-301-8970.
Here's how she got out of a meeting. She would pretend she was going into labor. That was a good one. Any very pregnant women, keep that in mind. You can use that. Gotta go. I feel a contraction. Gotta go to the hospital.
Well,
See
how
you
many
later.
times can you do it, though? It's sort of like Manny Ramirez and his dead grandmother
Well,
to get out of everything.
I think you can do it for at least 2 months. It could be false contraction, false labor. You haven't had any babies, Jim, so you wouldn't know about false labor, but there's a lot of false labor. So you could say it was a false alarm. You can use it from, maybe 30 weeks to 40 weeks when you finally have the kid. Get you out of a lot of meetings that way.
Where are we going next?
Anonymous texter says, the phrase that makes my skin crawl is, the reason I called you all here. That's how a lot of people start their meetings.
It was like Pete Hegseth for the military meeting.
He did that, yeah. Here's another one. Paul from Melrose. One of my favorite phrases from my time in the state legislature, everything's been said, but not everyone has said it.
Well,
that's the city council.
Well,
Tell
can I tell
about
you
the
the
city
story?
council.
I mentioned to our team this morning when I was a Cambridge city councilor for that one ill-fated term a long time ago, the Globe reporter, and I apologize, I forget the name of the guy who was assigned to the Cambridge City Council. He and I were talking one day, and he said, I don't know why, how it came. He says, you know what the most terror-inducing moment is at the city council? I said, no. And he said, when one of the 9 councilors raises their hand to speak. And I said, why? And he said, because that means the other 8 are going to have to speak
Exactly.
also.
They're going to have to respond.
Totally true.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with the blast email, right? It's the same thought process. You can't, if somebody brings something up, then you have to get into the flow of everything.
Don't you think that people the people who work with you respect you much more if you conduct a tight, respectful meeting?
Well, they're all here, Jim. You can ask them. You're the guy that's conducting the.
I don't conduct the meetings. These are collaborative meetings.
They are?
Jamie runs the meetings.
Yeah.
And you and I are part of the meeting.
Really? Is that how it works? I thought it was
Ask Jamie. He's with you, right?
I'm not sure if Jamie's running the meetings.
Ask
actually.
Jamie if he's running the
I
meetings.
think it might be Jim that's running
Not
the
running
meetings.
the meeting.
Yeah, and it's been great that Jim's been home here. He's not been in the studio. So it's like
I know you're
Marjorie, go ask
bad-mouthing
Jamie.
me.
Go ask Jamie. So Marjorie's running back and forth. What did I call myself this morning? Messenger girl. Here she is again. I have more messages from Jim. I must have run back and forth like 20 times this morning, Jim. I got my exercise in.
That's a fabulous story. I'm really glad you told it, by the way. It's really, that was fabulous.
Yeah, okay.
How do you feel about meetings, Jared Bowen? And I don't even know, does your team have endless meetings? Well, how do you do that at your
We
show?
definitely do not have endless meetings. My team is here too. Our meetings are short and tight and no longer than they need to be.
There you go.
Excellent. That's excellent.
Do you run your meetings, or does your executive producer run your meetings?
Our executive producer, Chelsea, runs our meetings.
Yeah, she does. I don't think Chelsea was running our meetings when she was our executive
She
producer.
actually was running. She was. She was.
Oh my goodness! This is
You
a
are
man.
really-
This
What
is
did
a
I
very
step into this time?
self-reflective man.
I didn't say I was self-reflective.
No, I know. That's why you goofed up who's running the meetings, but it's okay.
Who is
Is Jim the marionette? Or is it?
No, Jim is the puppet master.
The
I would
puppet
say.
master. Oh, the marionette
is
is the
so
puppet. Right.
unfair. It's really.
You're pulling
Speaking of
all the
puppets.
strings, Jim, from the Red Room.
What
From
are
the
you
Red
doing?
Room.
What are you doing on your show there?
You know why
Jared?
we
Do you
call
have
it
a
the Red?
Harriet puppet in the Red Room?
Do you know why we call it the Red Room? Did we tell you this yesterday?
You
Don't
did tell
do
me.
that
Yeah,
again.
Let's
because
not
of
go there again. I
Melanie
don't want to go
Rose,
there. No,
Netflix
listening.
star. This is. She
Can't
says
hear.
how to build a sex room, and the first thing you have to
No,
do is paint it
not listening.
red.
Okay, good.
And Jim
Can't
is
hear
in
it.
step 1. We don't
What are
know
you
how many
doing?
steps he's completed.
What are you doing on your
I'm
show?
supposed to transition from that to A Christmas Carol, which
No,
is
go ahead.
exactly
Oh,
what
sorry.
we're talking about on the
Okay.
show, because Will Lyman is here. He's playing
Oh,
Ebenezer
God.
Scrooge. He's right inside of us right now, also the voice of Frontline,
Oh,
of
my
course. And his
goodness.
daughter, Georgia
My
Lyman,
goodness.
is here talking about Yellow Bird Chase at Liars and Believers. They're an extraordinary family.
Can I tell you something?
The voice of Will Lyman? Oh,
Will
my
Lyman
goodness.
is one of the most talented people that has ever touched this operation.
I'm surprised
He
it hasn't
is
been
just-
stolen by
he is
AI.
Brilliant, a performer,
You know,
a
to
voice.
that voice. Wouldn't you steal that voice if you were
unbelievable.
looking for a voice?
Well,
That's
I
great.
wouldn't
I'll be
plant that
listening.
seed. I wouldn't
What else
do
do you
that.
have? What else?
Kristen Parker, one of the co-curators of Revolution, 250 years of Revolution, right here at the Boston Public Library. She is going to join us about that exhibition, as I told you both when I was with you. I loved. And then Gregory Maguire is here, the author of Wicked. He is going to be talking about Midwinter Revels and the adaptation of his story Matchless for the stage.
Great. That's going to be another great
You know,
show.
Jared has those guests. Tomorrow we have like the head of sanitation in Somerville. I mean, what the hell is going on here?
That is not true.
I'm only kidding.
That is
Jared,
not
we'll be
true.
listening to your
Jared,
show.
thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
All right.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you, Jared, for stopping by. Jared and the Culture Show start as soon as we are done here, and they're at the Boston Public Library today. If you haven't gotten enough of us already, you can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we are not speaking with the head of sanitation in Somerville. We have, as a guest, the retired federal judge, Nancy Gertner, who could talk all about the legalities of what's going on in the Trump administration, former Public Safety Secretary Andrew Cabral, and Dr. Megan Ranney and the Levies. This is a great band that we're talking about. They're going to be playing for us live in Studio 3.
By the way, Randy is head of the School of Public Health. You should share. In Yale.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that.
And can you skip some of this? Because I want to get to the Ryan Landry thing.
Okay, just want to really quickly, thanks to the long-suffering Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Mira Donaldson, John the Club Parker, Jenny Bologna, Maddie Guy, Brad Lewis, Juan Jose Cadena, the Newsfeed Cafe, the Lennox Hotel. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to urge people, as we have, to go to Ryan Landry and the Gold Dust Orphans new play. You go to thegolddustorphans.org for tickets. Wonderful review by Don O'Coin in the Globe. Let me just read. It says something heartening about our city, our fair city, that so many Bostonians make room for their holiday calendars for Ryan Landry's brand of inspired mayhem. And it says something about Landry, that he hasn't dialed back on the outrageousness of his Christmas time shows one iota, on and on and on. It mentions that we have a little role as puppets there too.
Yep.
Check it out, thegolddustorphans.org.
Yeah, thank you very much for tuning in today. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Hope you can tune in again tomorrow, and hope you have a great afternoon.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Minus 33 Merino Wool in Ashland, New Hampshire. Since 1916, makers of all-natural merino wool underwear, outerwear, and New Hampshire-made socks. Their merino wool clothing and accessories are available at minus33.com.
After a local farmer leaves a bowl of eggs on a Joe Hutto's front porch, his life is forever changed as he begins to raise a family of turkey chicks. Watch Nature, My Life as a Turkey, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Culture Show news desk, on chilly night in town. Band, which formed in 2010, has released 4 studio albums, and every one is a keeper. And if you find yourself near the Coolidge Corner Theater tonight, keep an eye out for Jared Bowen, who has the pleasure of interviewing actor extraordinaire Ethan Hawke at the screening of his new film Blue Moon. Hawke is also being presented with the coveted Coolidge Award as well. That's this edition of the GBH News Weekly Wednesday Afternoon Culture Cast. I'm Henry Santoro. Next up, The Culture Show with your friend and mine, Jared Bowen, live at the Boston Public Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, a family takes center stage. Actor Will Lyman steps into the role of the haunted and hollow-hearted Ebenezer Scrooge in a production of A Christmas Carol, while his daughter, actress and producer Georgia Lyman, brings the whimsical physical theater adventure Yellow Bird Chase to the stage. 2 Lymans, 2 productions, 1 remarkable theatrical legacy. Then the Boston Public Library is revisiting the forces that have shaped this country with Revolution, a wide-ranging exhibition drawn from its extraordinary archives. Co-curated by Kristen Parker, the show traces how Americans have pushed, protested, and reimagined the nation through moments of upheaval, from the earliest days of the country to today's unfinished struggles. And Midwinter Revels lights up the darkest days of the year. This season's solstice celebration finds inspiration from Matchless, Gregory Maguire's reimagining of The Little Match Girl. The best-selling author of Wicked and director Deborah Wise join us to talk about adapting Maguire's world into music, ritual, and holiday theater. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Every family has its legacy. For the Lymans, like the Barrymores, that legacy happens to be the stage. And this season, father and daughter are moving in tandem, each lighting up different corners of the theater world. Will Lyman is one of Boston's most respected and unmistakable actors. You know his voice well on our own PBS Frontline series. This week, he is donning both the top hat and the temperament of Ebenezer Scrooge in Commonwealth Shakespeare Company's production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, opening Saturday. It's a role that asks him to summon both life's darkness and redemption in the holiday classic. His daughter, actor and producer Georgia Lyman, is bringing a very different tale to life. As executive producer of the theater ensemble Liars and Believers, she's behind Yellow Bird Chase, a whimsical, family-friendly adventure that blends clowning, puppetry, and physical theater. It lands on stage December 12th. Before their respective schedules become all-consuming, they found time to join us to talk about it all. Will Lyman, Georgia Lyman, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you both here.
Thanks very much, Jared.
Thank you very much, Jared.
Well, how often do you come together like this?
I think the last time was for you 10 years ago.
You were both on Open Studio with me 10 years ago, which I find we'll plumb that a little bit. But let's start to talk about your respective projects. Will, I'll start with you. What does it take to play Ebenezer Scrooge? He's one of these, of course, monumental characters.
Well, yeah, he is monumental and certainly well known. For me, Scrooge embodies so much of what lies sometimes deep within us and sometimes right on the surface, in both respects. Both his meanness, his uncomfortableness, his lack of empathy, big word these days, and as well as his capacity for joy. So they're all there. They're all there in each one of us. So it's not a long journey to make.
When you, and we should mention that this was so successful last year, it's returning, it's a new Boston tradition presented by Commonwealth Shakespeare Company. When you first began to look at this last year, or maybe even more revelations this year, what did you see in him and how he is that maybe you hadn't understood before?
Well, I think we have had a chance to look a little more deeply into each of the characters, Scrooge in particular. We were kind of under the gun last year. We got started late and everything was kind of a rush job. So it's been really wonderful to have the chance to go back and look at it again, and in a much more relaxed manner. And we have found more ways to integrate him into the story. I found myself kind of standing off to the side last year a little too much. But I think he's more involved in what's going on and therefore able to absorb more of the message of the spirits. And I think we're finding a little more instance for humor, not because Scrooge is funny, but because the situations that he brings up are funny. strike us as funny. So there's definite new directions there.
Well, speaking of directions, we'll switch directions for a moment. In Georgia, tell us about Liars and Believers and what you have coming up, which does seem filled with a lot of humor as well.
It is, yes. This is definitely somewhat more lighthearted and with just as much depth and meaning, but I hope even more laughs than the ghosts who scare children.
More than Scrooge gets.
Liars and Believers is a devised ensemble, which basically in non-jargon terms means we make everything up ourselves. I should preface this by telling you and the listeners and viewers that I am not acting in this production. I've been the executive I've been the executive producer for Liars and Believers for the last 4 years. And it's really a joy to watch this show in particular, which has been running not continuously, but touring and running and being presented for the last 10 years all around the country. And we brought it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 22. And it's really a joy to be able to bring it back home to Cambridge, where it originated. And this is a little burgeoning friendship between Central Square Theatre and Liars and Believers. You may recall that they used to do a lot of family programming back in the day around this sort of holiday December slot. And so we thought we'd try and spread a little holiday cheer with this delightful, whimsical story.
Well, tell us a little bit about the story. What is the yellow bird chase? Who's the little yellow bird?
Sure. So this is the story of a trio of bumbling yet lovable maintenance workers who discover a mysterious yellow bird. They chase it, and chaos ensues. They chase it over land, over sea, even through the air, meeting a delightful cast of characters that are created from the scenic and found object puppets that they make on stage in front of your very eyes. They transform them into camels, birds, helicopters, whatever you can imagine. And they do all of this without ever leaving the maintenance closet. And along the way, they learn how to play nice with each other. They learn about conflict. They learn about collaboration. They learn about empathy. And the choice is up to you as to what happens to the yellow bird in the end. Will they catch it? Come and find out.
Choose your own adventure. We love it. I can't but help but note how much your father is smiling as you're talking. The boo-hoo when you declared that you're not acting in this. You're executive producer here. Will, what was it for you to see your daughter enter this field?
Well,
how was that? How was that for you? Tell us all about it.
When I discovered that she was immensely talented, it was such a pleasure to watch her on the stage, and I was obviously very, very proud of her and what she brought forth. I wish the theater were a more lucrative profession, and I think Georgia does as well, but it's not. Georgia has a family, and but it was I'm just overwhelmed by what I see her do, both on the stage and on film and on camera. She has a natural tendency to both, which is, I think, rather rare.
And so, Georgia, to what extent do you attribute your pursuit of this field to your dad and what you saw in him growing up?
It's all I've ever known how to do. It's been a part of the fabric of my life and my upbringing and my history. And, I grew up on sets and backstage, and my first playmates were actors and stuntmen, and who were really just 13-year-old boys in 30-year-old bodies. And so growing up watching it and being a part of it and seeing the care and the talent and the dedication and the disappointment and everything that goes along with it, I think just sort of was integrated. I don't really know how to do anything else. And that includes becoming a producer and a curator and you didn't
learn that from me.
I think I learned that from Mom, actually.
I think that's more likely.
It very much shaped me. I would not be here without that. I would not be doing this. I'd be here, but maybe not here without that influence.
Yeah. So, Will, let me take a moment to ask about your voice, which for anybody who's listening on the radio, of course, we're streaming as well, but certainly knows you from so many things, including our own Frontline series. How much is the voice constructed, as it were? In other words, did you have to build it, or have you simply used what you've been given?
It's a gift from God, Jared. Come on.
The voice was there to begin with. In terms of being able to use it properly is another question entirely. It did not come naturally to me, I have to say. And it really wasn't until quite well into my career as both as a narrator and an actor that I actually learned the elements of control and the elements of what makes it work and what makes it work properly the way it's supposed to.
Are you talking about breath and intonation?
Well, yeah. I mean, the power supply, the vibrating organ, and the resonance chamber, the three of them working together, and without undue strain. And that took, when I really settled down and said, I've got to figure this out because things are not working for me. It took me about a year to find it, and I came across a really wonderful book, which I have not been able to find ever since, a book by Clifford Stevens, who worked with the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. And I have since lost the book, but
he doesn't need it anymore.
But I wished I'd had it because I glommed onto one chapter, and it was the key for me, and I started working on that, those exercises, and everything changed. So, yeah.
Well, Georgia, to expand on something your father just said, and you said yourself about, here he is well into his career, not moving away from his career, and still developing this of his many tools. As you say, you can't imagine doing anything else. What is it about theater and this craft?
It's the money. That's a really good question. It's funny because I'm filming a small part in a television series right now for the first time in a while, and I'm sort of reactivating the acting muscles in a way that I haven't for some years now. And acting in a way is really selfish. It's really selfish. It can be very narcissistic. Like, who are you to tell this story? Why is it all about me? But, there can be a real ego struggle there. But what it is, what the craft of storytelling is for me is the most basic form of communication. This is how we learn. This is how we communicate. This is how we learn to trust each other, to engage in other people's experiences, if you're trying to teach someone how to do something, there's no better way than to act it out, to show them physically how it's done, and to give them the tools, the emotional tools, the communication skills to be able to do that. And a good story can change the world. As any PR person will tell you. A good story and the craft and the simplicity sometimes and the spectacle sometimes and the artistry of a good story really has the power to change us, to change our belief system, to change our minds, to change our actions. And that's very important to me, and I have the privilege of being able to do it from both the artistic side and from the other side of the table, where I get to encourage these people to bring their best selves to the project for the goal of that perfect story.
Otherwise, the mom and dad side of the table, as you explained just a little bit ago. That is the voice of Georgia Lyman, executive producer of the theater ensemble Liars and Believers. Their production of Yellow Bird Chase is on stage December 12th through the 21st at Central Square Theater. She's joined by Will Lyman, her father, who's starring as Ebenezer Scrooge in Commonwealth Shakespeare Company's production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. That starts on Saturday at the Emerson Cutler Majestic and goes through December 23rd. Well, Will, to that end, I think of the spectrum and all of the productions I've seen you in over the years, and I think of King Lear on Boston Common, too, playing Ebenezer Scrooge. And can you feel the house at the end of each night and what people feel like after King Lear and what they feel like after A Christmas Carol?
I think it's different for actors on the stage and for members of the audience that sit there. And I think there's something that you were asking, what is the thing that drives our interest in this? There's something really special about having a whole bunch of people in the room experiencing the same thing, and the fact that it's not just a look at this in the theater, it's a feel this, and in the very best theater, that's what happens. It doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen. I've seen many productions in which it doesn't happen. I'm sure you have as well. But
won't name names.
Don't say anything. Don't say anything.
we won't go too deeply into that. But when it happens, it's truly remarkable. And the whole point is that the people on stage are willing to do something and to experience something, and to say, you are welcome to feel this as your own. This is you. It's not just me, it's you. And when that happens, it's electric.
So then how do you find your magic when you're doing the voiceovers, which I can imagine you're in an audio booth, probably by yourself, wearing headsets?
I pretend I'm talking to Georgia.
That's so sweet. Does it come down to a visualization?
I've often used it. I used it to talk to various different people. In fact, there was a producer many years ago who did a production about the O-Star race, the Observer Single-Handed Transatlantic Race, which is a single-handed race across the Atlantic. And,
she just pulled that acronym out of nowhere.
When I narrated the film for him, his instructions to me were, I don't want like a narration. I don't want like a narrator. I want somebody who sounds like he's the guy sitting next to you on the couch, who was just filling in the blanks for you. It's like, oh, this is what was going on there. That was, you know, and it was a remarkably instructive direction, and I have used that as well. I just try to fill in the information that people need to understand the story, and to kind of sometimes whisper it in their ear, sometimes say it a little more forcefully, depending on the content. When we did, long ago, and it's just starting out, we did the Vietnam of television history. That was one of the first times, I think, that there was actual narration to picture, and it was extremely cumbersome because we were working with 16 millimeter film, and there's no comparison to today's, you know, punch a button, you're back 30 seconds, or back an hour, or what, you know, you have to roll it back and wait for it. And but I wanted to do it to picture because I was a novice at the time, and I wanted to make sure that I understood the emotional content that was in the picture, so that I could talk to that, not to replicate it, but to be able to talk sensitively about what was on the screen at the same time. So there was it's been a whole, 50 years of learning. So.
Well, and sharing. I mean, we all come away with our impressions, especially from the Frontline films, for the way you've guided us.
Well, thank you. That's a remarkable team, I have to say.
They are.
I'm very lucky to work with them.
Well, and Georgia, I now understand how you had no choice but to go into your, just listening to your dad in these few minutes. I completely understand.
There you go.
Thank you both so much for being here today. Always great to see you both.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
We'll do it again in another 10 years.
Oh,
that was the last time we did it. Okay, we'll speed it up.
As long as I can sit down.
Will Lyman stars as Ebenezer Scrooge in Commonwealth Shakespeare Company's production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It's on stage at the Emerson Cutler Majestic Theater Saturday through December 23rd. To learn more, go to comshakes.org. Georgia Lyman is the executive producer of the theater ensemble Liars and Believers. Their production of Yellow Bird Chase is on stage December 12th through the 21st for 2 weekends at Central Square Theater. To learn more, go to liarsandbelievers.com. But thank you again. Coming up, 250 years of protest and possibility is now on view in the new exhibition Revolution, on view right here at the Boston Public Library. That conversation is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as the CDC reconsiders its stance on childhood vaccinations, Governor Healy and state health leaders are stressing the importance of vaccines for kids. And with the MCAS out, Governor Healy is proposing a new framework of educational standards students must meet to graduate from high school. We'll look at how it may or may not set students up for success and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Bryant University, ranked 5th in the nation by LinkedIn's 2025 Top Colleges list for internships and recruiter demand. Committed to preparing students to be day one ready for success. Learn more at bryant.edu. And Revels. Audiences can experience the joy of the holiday season with Midwinter Revels, a Scandinavian story for Christmas. December 12th through 28th at Sanders Theater, Harvard University. Tickets at revels.org/midwinter. And MIT Federal Credit Union. With a full range of financial services, their financial advisors are committed to helping members' money work for them. Membership's open to the public. More at mitfcu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
Securely and confidentially contact GBH News by messaging us on the Signal app. Visit gbhnews.org/investigations for more information. gbhnews.org/investigations.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Speaking of the library, it has opened a window onto the charged moments that shaped this country with its new exhibition, Revolution, 250 Years of Art and Activism in Boston. Drawn from the library's vast archives, it traces how people have pushed, protested, and provoked their way through periods of American upheaval, from the nation's founding to its ongoing struggles. At its heart is the question, how do these revolutions get remembered, and what gets left out? Kristen Parker is among the curators bringing these stories into view. She joins us to talk about the materials she's uncovered, the voices she wants to elevate, and why this is a moment to reconsider what revolution even means. Kristen Parker, welcome to the show. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
Well, we just walked through the exhibition a couple of weeks ago, and I was so blown away by this. You and your team have put together something really extraordinary, because I think now when we're hearing of exhibitions of this nature, we think of maybe some of the similar images for textbooks and not that tell this country's history, but you've made sure it's so much more than that.
Thank you. Well, when approaching such an enormous topic that is dear to the heart of Bostonians, it definitely gave us some time to pause and think about how do we want to present it? How do we want to interpret it? And what can the library's collection say? So the Boston Public Library happens to have an enormous arts collection, special collections, of over 1 million items, so it was a daunting task. And we knew that we could tell a layered story, and we knew that we wanted to uncover some of the hidden histories that may have been overlooked in a way to celebrate the depth of our collections.
Well, let me give a little bit of the design element too.
Yeah.
And if you're streaming on our GBH News YouTube channel or here at the library, you see on our monitor something that looks like it might be in the midst of construction. You see scaffolding and you see plywood. I love the use of plywood because when I walked into those galleries, I smelled wood, which to me means new and fresh. We're talking about 250 years of history. Why do those two go together?
Right. Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is I think it's very important to consider how our collections are living collections. So some people might consider special collections containing things from the past. And yes, we do have things from the past, and we do collect works of art from the present as well. This is a living collection. And as we began to think about the idea of revolution, we thought about revolution as a continuum. We're always in revolution. We're always building upon the legacies of those who came before us. And so with our designers, who we were fortunate enough to work with for the exhibition, we leaned into the idea of building and constructing and working together. And so we really we decided to use plywood and scaffolding. And believe me, I've never done an exhibition like this before in any of the museums or any other institution I've ever worked at. And sometimes I think at the very beginning people would walk by thinking that the exhibition was indeed still under construction. But no, we've gotten a really great response, which is exciting. It's a challenge, plywood, but it's been working out really well.
Well, as you thought about this, and you're telling this story of something that's still building, a country that's still constructing itself, revolution that does continue to move forward and is still being manufactured in certain ways, what was revealed to you as you looked at 2 centuries of artists telling stories about revolution?
It's the same story over and over again, that we are still continuing to face many of the same challenges and the fights for social justice that occurred since the very beginning of the founding of this nation. So one of the major introductions to this exhibition is all about who is the revolution for, who was left out, and how have people worked over time to make sure that we're continuing to fight for change. And so throughout the exhibition, you'll see examples of that. And that's something that we really wanted to iterate or emphasize, is we wanted to show or demonstrate success. That when people do come together to fight for change, they can achieve that change.
You have a great juxtaposition which people find toward the end of the exhibition as they look back toward the beginning of the exhibition. And it's a giant portrait of George Washington. We'll show it in just a moment. But also the fabric arts of Michael C. Thorpe. He's a sculptor, he's a painter, he's been on the show, he's a local artist who is absolutely brilliant, so young, he's on such a trajectory. But give me a sense talk us through what he has done in his portrait, which you can see here is disassembled to some degree, and how that exists in contrast with this very grand, very austere portrait of George Washington.
Well, that George Washington painting by Emanuel Lutz is an incredibly important, historic, monumental painting that's on view in the Washington Room at the Boston Public Library and has been since 1955 when it was purchased for the library, for the city of Boston. But it was never really, it's kind of high above people's heads. People walk by it. Sometimes people ask, why a portrait of Washington? Of course, he's a hero, and he has a challenging background as well as an enslaver. And so we really have been reckoning with that topic. We thought a lot about it and think a lot about who are our heroes today. When we look at the names of all of the heroic figures on the facade of the BPL, et cetera, who are we honoring? Who are the people that we'd like to etch in stone and granite? So with Michael, we knew that we wanted to sort of think about or interrogate or reinterpret the George Washington portrait. And we invited him in. We asked him what he might like to respond to. He's the artist. He gets to decide whatever he'd like to decide. And he said, you know what? I want to do a portrait of Washington. And we said, have at it. We really admired him as an artist, first. So so he arranged these quilted panels. There are about 24 quilted panels. that can be rearranged. And his point is that the narrative and the story is changing depending on who is telling that story. And he will return to the library to rotate those panels over time to emphasize that point.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Kristen Parker, among the curators of Revolution, 250 Years of Art and Activism, right here at the Boston Public Library, which also means free admission to see this exhibition. I opened this by talking about some of the known images and how you disrupt that. Known images of the Revolution include the Boston Massacre, and you feature a number of artists looking at that moment, but through very different lenses.
Yes, and Emily Bibb, who's our curator of prints and drawings, put together a suite of 3 depictions of the Boston Massacre, which again, we can tell that story because of the depths of our collections. We have many iterations of the Boston Massacre, but in this case, we featured the one that is the most sort of iconic, which is the original etching by Paul Revere. And then a second one,
which was meant to be propaganda to sweep up revolution.
That's right. So the British are featured, really suppressing the patriots and things. And then next to that is a contemporary work by Bob Tomlillo, who's a Boston printmaker, and he worked with Artists for Humanity, the student printmakers there, and they featured Crispus Attucks front and center, and that was produced in 2020. Next to that is a portrait, or is a print by Larry Rivers from the 1970s, which is which was made during the Vietnam War. So it's a whole portfolio about the Vietnam War and sort of turning the massacre onto us. So the soldiers are actually pointing their rifles at us. And then later on,
back to your earlier point that the same themes continue.
That's right. And then finally, in the narration of the Revolutionary War, it moves into the Civil War, which is our second revolution. And in that section of the exhibition, we feature a lithograph by William Champney, which features Crispus Attucks front and center, really large. And his figure grows over time, especially as we move into the Civil War and the abolitionist movement.
You also have what I was quite struck by, especially being a journalist, the morgue, the Boston Herald Traveler morgue photos. The morgue is the repository of what we would have seen covered day in and day out in newspapers, because of course journalists are documenting what's happening on the moment. As you and your team sifted through that incredible wealth of photography, what began to surface as you winnowed that down for the exhibition?
Yeah, so Aaron Schmidt is our curator of photography, and he's responsible for the Boston Herald Traveler Photo Morgue, which has over 800,000 photographs, working photographs. They're really mangled. The edges are all torn. They're not works of art, but they tell incredible stories. And we kind of rescued that collection many, many years ago, not quite sure how we're going to tackle it. It takes up a lot of room in storage, but it can tell every story that you can imagine. And in that case, we really were, as we browsed through it, we really saw so much activity in there. There's a lot of evidence of social uprisings in that collection. And it's funny because they're all still in the original housing, so all the folders are labeled as the journalists would have labeled them. So when we were trying to look at
fresh off their stories.
That's right. And so when we look for them, they all haven't been rehoused yet or kind of recatalogued. So when you look for, if you want to look up like uprising or something like that, it says riots. So, it's just this way that they were interpreting it versus how we may look at that today. And that's just, librarians are always dealing with that kind of description, So anyway, in this case, it was amazing to be able to pull these photographs out. And I have to say, we were inspired by a local photographer from Dorchester named Abdul Nasser Mika, who we invited him to come in and look at our collection and support him as a budding film photographer. And he said, he's looking through the Boston Herald Traveler Photo Morgue, and he's really interested in looking at photographs of his neighborhood of Dorchester. And he said, I never knew about these organizations, these like women's rights organizations, and these organizations that were fighting for change. I didn't know they existed in my neighborhood. And so I thought, hang on a second, we got to get that out there so people can know this stuff. And so that was another inspiration for making sure we were bringing these out into this exhibition. So we know our own history. And I'm really excited because he is a teacher now at the Urban Achievers School, and he just brought his class in.
Oh.
So we got to teach from the exhibition, which was really exciting.
Because presumably the class wouldn't know either. I mean, it's
Exactly.
amazing how much a generation can change things, how much
Yeah.
we see the city around us changing in just a generation, and
That's
then what
right.
can disappear. Well, speaking of the uprisings, we kind of sometimes forget, maybe COVID was the last time that reminded us that artifacts that materialize in the moment are museum worthy or special collections worthy at the end of the day. I remember when we got our first listings from the city of the do's and don'ts during this pandemic. I saved it because I remember thinking that this is going to be, at least to somebody in my
Good.
family someday,
Yes.
so important because they'll find it hard to believe all of these instructions we were given of the time. But you have artifacts from protests that people thought the same thing, that they weren't necessarily art or worth saving.
Yeah, that's right. In the sort of, as you move to the last section, we have some two posters that were created by students at the museum school. And this was done after the Kent State massacre and during the Vietnam War era, and there were a lot of protests going on. And these students made a collection of silkscreen prints. They're wonderful, very graphic, fist up, also declaring where there were going to be meetings and organizing going on and things like that. And what we learned as we were studying these posters is that the activist group wanted to just put those posters up and not preserve them. They said these are for the street, these are for the people, we don't care if we keep them or not. But one of the activists said, hang on a second, I want to keep a set of these so that our successors, the people that come after us, can know what happened here. And thankfully they did, because now we're able to feature that and show, in fact, what people were doing in the streets, what people were doing to organize at that time.
And I was struck by how tactile they are. You can almost hear the sounds and just feel the heat of what the environment in which those posters were used.
Definitely. There's a lot of color. One of the things we wanted to make sure of in this exhibition that when people came in, they weren't just seeing like black and white, the dark etchings and things like that. And so we did make a concerted effort to bring in a lot of color as well, relevant color.
All of that and plywood and the smell
That's
of
right.
fresh wood.
Yes.
Loved it all.
Yes.
Kristen Parker, congratulations on the show to you and your team. It's really
Thank you so
extraordinary. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Revolution, 250 Years of Art and Activism in Boston is on view through April 21st at the Boston Public Library's Central Library in Copley Square in the McKim Exhibition Hall. So you can come and see the culture show. You can trot down the hall right after and go see the exhibition, which of course is free. Kristen Parker is among the curators behind the exhibition. Coming up, the author of Wicked, Gregory Maguire, is here to discuss how, as with Wicked, he came to see Hans Christian Andersen's story of the little match girl in a different light, and how we can find it on stage at Midwinter Revels. He's next on The Culture Show, along with Deborah Wise, its director. Stay with us.
Trade.
Huge responses from across Europe, from the Danish Prime Minister.
Climate.
Picture this all filled with ice.
Security.
Not only do we need to end the war, we also need to prevent the next war.
These are global issues, and to understand them, you need a global perspective. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. Join us for The World each and every weekday.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Lyric Stage, presenting A Sherlock Carol. This fresh and charming reimagining of Sherlock Holmes and Ebenezer Scrooge is a Yuletide detective story that's as good as gold. Running November 14th through December 21st at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com. And Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, offering PPO and HMO Medicare Advantage plans with a broad network of doctors and hospitals. BlueCrossMA.com/go. And The Trustees, presenting Winter Lights, a celebration of seasonal sparkle with light displays in Stockbridge and Canton, Massachusetts, running Wednesday through Sunday nights through early January. Advance tickets required. More at thetrustees.org/winterlights.
From your community and across the Commonwealth, GBH News is your home for trusted local news. GBH 89.7, online at gbhnews.org, and on the GBH News YouTube channel.
Cultures mark the turning of the season and remind us that winter has always been a time for imagination. This year's production draws its inspiration from Matchless, a novella by Gregory Maguire, also the author of a little tale called Wicked, that reimagines Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Match Girl. He expands the story into a wider portrait of a harbor town in winter, the neighbors whose lives run alongside hers, and the role of community, contemplating what we do or don't do for one another. Directed by Deborah Wise, Midwinter Revels folds Matchless into its signature mix of musical, ritual, and storytelling, this year with a Scandinavian focus. It's a pairing that feels, well, perfectly matched for the company's way of reimagining winter tales. This year's production will be performed at Sanders Theatre December 12th through the 28th and is followed by a virtual encore streaming option. Deborah Wise is Revels' interim artistic director. Gregory Maguire is a best-selling author whose books include Wicked, of course, the inspiration for the musical and the new films. He is the author of Matchless. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Oh,
Thank you.
glad to be here.
Thank you so much. We're delighted to be here.
Well, Deborah, let me start with you because I know Gregory's story has resonated with you for a very long time. Why?
I heard him read it on public radio when it first came out. It was 2008, is that right? Yeah. And I remember thinking, I could see it on stage. I could see how the audience would be drawn into the story of Frederick, this child who picked up whatever he could find and through his imagination transform it into, well, in this case, he's creating a secret town to which he wants to invite other lonely souls to live with him on his island. So that's the heart of the story, and I felt like we can create that. We can create that in the theater. So we're entering into Frederick's story, and it was a wonderful adventure to do that for 2 years at Central Square Theater, and then to be able to take that piece that was done with just 40 people, and expand it into the aesthetic of the Revels, which is going to embrace about 70 people, singers, dancers, storytellers, wonderful musicians. Seemed equally exciting and inviting, because it's an intimate story, but I think it has an epic scale.
Well, yeah, Gregory, to that end, and now to sharpen the question I just asked Deborah, what did you see in Hans Christian Andersen? This is your gift, these little moments that you find that you then explore.
I was invited by NPR to do a story, a Christmas story, and I immediately thought, well, I can't have any of the modern commercial characters of Christmas, like snowmen and reindeers and stuff like that. And probably NPR won't want me to veer too deeply into the Christian roots of the Christmas celebrations, although they're there. And I thought, where in the world is there something in between that still has power and even magnificence, social magnificence, that does not trespass on either direction? And Hans Christian Andersen came up to me almost at once, as if he were waiting on the other side of the sound booth saying, I'm here, I've got something for you. I do, and I always loved to do this, Jared, when I was a kid. I do love to read old stories and think, well, what about this person who only has one line and then goes out the door we never see again? What is their life like? Frankly, Jared, it's the same question we ask when we're writing the T. We see somebody who's reading, Field and Stream, and we think, well, what is your life like when you get off at Davis Square? Where is your Field and Stream? Why do you have that? I mean, my imagination just gets caught by the loose threads, not by the intact, coherent, woven and finished whole, but by the loose threads. I have to say, I loved seeing that picture from your previous story, the portrait of George Washington that rearranges in 16 squares, I think, a picture with a gold frame around it, but by rearranging it, the frame changes, not its orientation, but also even its meaning. I think what Deborah does is try to break the frame. And I think what I do is try to break the frame also to invite more people in. There are some who might say, Scandinavia, that's awfully Northern European and white of us here in Boston, isn't it? No, the frame can always be broken because the story, the village may have grown to 70 people from 40, but the story is about isolation and loneliness and the need for frame breaking.
Well, it's an incredibly heartbreaking story, but it reminds us of this need for community and how, and to continue on, how often do we not look up when we're on the T, especially now with our phones? We don't necessarily recognize the other people and maybe somebody who is in need. And this is the time of year where we want to be especially reminded of this. And this is why it is perfect fodder for midwinter revels.
Yes. I would love to. I'm distracted thinking about Gregory, the story that you like to tell about your imagination of Frederick, because the story, although it started with The Match Girl, right. That story of Hans Christian Andersen's, it becomes the story of Frederick.
Yes, I think most people, my generation or older, of whom there are increasingly few, know the story of the little match girl who, on I think in the original it's New Year's Eve, goes out to sell her last few matches, but can't sell them, and she's very poor. She's freezing. Her mother has died, and she lights matches in the end to try to keep herself warm in her starvation moment, and to try to keep her hope up in her moment of desperation. And in the end of Hans Christian Andersen's story, two things happen. She dies of the cold and of neglect, of poverty and want, and she is reunited in heaven, a heaven that for a 19th century audience would have been as real as the person reading Field and Stream on the T. It was a known concept that would have been consoling. My job for that story was to say, how can I look at what Hans Christian Andersen left for us, one of his darkest and most despairing of stories, and retell it in a way that connects it to our spirit of community, our spirit of life and joy. Breville's is a great match because singing and dancing and children on the stage, community building at its heart. But this had to happen through the story basically of one child alone on the street on the evening that she dies. So I read the story. It's only about 4 pages long. And in one scene, just as the little match girl is lighting her second last match, I think, her shoe falls off. And before she can reclaim it, a little boy darts out of the shadows and picks it up and says, "This will make a great boat for my babies," and runs away with it. So she's now has a bare foot in the cold and the ice and snow. Well, that's all well and good, but that's where Hans Christian Andersen left her and left the boy. What boy is going around at 10 o'clock at night looking for a boat for his babies in the lost shoes of starving children? It kind of doesn't compute. So I thought, who could that boy be? Why would he be out so late and alone? What does he mean by a boat for my babies? Don't we all want to make boats for our babies? Isn't that what we really want to do? That's what Revels does, and that's, I think, what the story does, to tie together, I gave this child a name, Friedrich, to tie together his desperate story with the match girls and bring the bows together and lace the laces so that there is continuity and there is transcendence for both of them.
And Frederick's family and what was left of the match girl's family joined together and make a new family. In the cast rehearsal yesterday, we were talking about how one thing that makes, that the characters have in common, characters in the story, is that they're available to love. That in spite of challenge or the uncertainties or the sadness that sometimes, that life inevitably brings, these characters look at each other, make eye contact, and reach out for each other and love each other. And it was quite a lovely realization to think about that.
It's a new way of saying that the child is brought to her mother's breast when she dies. This is another way it's another emblem of the same kind of collectivity that this season is all about, and that Revels has always celebrated so joyously and so well.
Speaking of the Revels, we are talking about Midwinter Revels on stage at Sanders Theater, December 12th through 28th. It's followed by a virtual encore streaming option. Joining me is Deborah Wise, Interim Artistic Director for Revels, the director of this production, and Gregory McGuire, the best-selling author, of course, of Matchless, among many, many stories. Let's bring the music into this. And Gregory, we'll talk to your own connection to the music here through your own biography. I've lost my notes, which tell me what we're listening to, but this is a piece that introduces us to the chorus. So this is Frederick's theme. How do you bring music into how do you weave the music into this, and how do you see its role in the show?
One of the aspects of the story that make that easy is that Frederick has such an active imagination. So Willemon, which is a very old story about two lovers are on their way to be wed, and she falls into the river. She's almost claimed by the river troll, but the beauty of the music made by her lover save her. And so that is an epic story, right? And we have this sort of marching rhythm. It's very easy to imagine Frederick on his way to the city, feeling like he's inside that story. So I think there's that moving into the imagination of our hero. Also the fact that there's this community of people who look out after him. There's this odd child who lives a little bit on the outside of things, but he loves to collect things, so we have these things for him, right? So when he goes into the city, he's greeted by this huge community that's celebrating Christmas, and so he witnesses them dancing and singing. And so that expansion from what's intimate and private to this community is actually very much what Revels is about.
I can see a little boy marching along the key.
Well, Gregory, people, now they're hearing you, but yeah, they may know you're writing, but music is very core to who you've been as well, including with the Revels.
Yes, actually, when I moved to the Boston area 47 years ago, I moved in September, and by November I was practicing for the first Revels that I was in that first year, because I'd been told about it. And I was a fan ever since. What I like to think about, Deborah, is to, I suddenly see a three-level symbology, if you will, as if there are three acetate pages that can be overlaid one upon the other, and they are about the story of the little match girl itself, where that boy, in Hans Andersen's language, says, "This will make a boat for my babies." He's clearly making something. He made something. Hans Andersen made something. I read that story, and I made something, not just of Hans Andersen's story, but I made the boy be a creator, be an inventor the way Hans Andersen did. And now at Revels, it's not 3 pages of acetate, it's 5. Deborah is making a story to fold it in yet again. Maybe it's a little bit like, bread dough, where you just keep folding it and kneading it, and it gets larger and larger and smells more and more magnificent.
Well, I wanted to go back to that original story. What was Andersen doing here when you're aware of his own biography, which was really, I don't know where this chime is coming from, I apologize for that, but for Andersen's story, what is he telling? Because his was a very difficult childhood, very in impoverished circumstances. What is he sharing?
I have not read a lot of Andersen in a while, but at one point in my life I had read everything he wrote for children, and he wrote other things as well. Almost all of his stories feature a character who is marginalized and thought ill of, and tries to, or needs to, or at least wants to improve his or her lot and become more embraced in the community that has ostracized him. The classic one is the ugly duckling. the ugly duckling is scorned by his beautiful brothers and sisters until he grows up to be more beautiful than the rest of them. Well, that was Hans Christian Andersen's professional ambition, to grow up and be more praised, more lauded. He would never be more beautiful because he was not a comely man. But he was certainly made for himself the place in the world that he needed to have in order to feel justified. I think we always talk about marginalized people, but I've come around to thinking we're all marginalized. We just have to tick the box, on the 30-page document to pick out in which way are you the most marginalized. We can all find about 15 things we could check, first time through. So I think that Matchless is about somebody who is right on the fringe, but still deserves salvation, however it comes. And that's also Friedrich. And Deborah has found a way to make the two stories refer to each other, lift each other up. And if you think The Little Match Girl's a sad story, well, come to Revels, because you will find something different. It's a joyous story in the way that it is unpacked for you here.
Well, we look forward to it. It's such a fabulous tradition every year, especially when it's homegrown as this one is. Thank you both for being here. Gregory, you're saved by the bell. I was going to ask you one question about all of the success of Wicked. We didn't have time for it today. We'll talk about that some other time. But congratulations on all of
thank you, Jared. Always great to see you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Midwinter Revels is on stage at Sanders Theater December 12th through the 28th. It will be followed by a virtual encore streaming option. To learn more, go to revels.org. Deborah Wise is interim artistic director for Revels. Gregory McGuire is best-selling author whose books, Wicked, of course, are the inspiration for the musical and the new films, and he is the author of Matchless. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow for Tony Award-winning actor Matt Doyle joining me about his new holiday show and working with Stephen Sondheim. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Please take just a couple of minutes right now to enroll. You'll feel so glad you're doing your part. And thank you so much to Catherine in Worcester and also Stephen in Lincoln. We have met our goal for this hour. Thank you so much. You can join them, make your gift. The phone lines are still open. Help us get a head start on the next hour's goal when you make your gift online at classical.org or by calling 888-995-9272.
Support for WCRB comes from you and Boston Ballet, presenting Mikko Niesinen's The Nutcracker. The annual holiday tradition features beloved characters, demanding choreography, and extraordinary sets and costumes that mesmerize audiences of all ages.